pink-haired girl reads a book in a sun-drenched field as narration introduces the era of romance fantasy. The pink-haired girl focuses intently on her book amidst a shower of white flower petals. A single green leaf drifts down onto the open pages of the book. Illustrations depict a story titled Promise of the World Tree, featuring a blonde man and a red-haired woman confronting a tyrant king. A massive hand looms over the protagonists as the narration describes their plan to take the throne.
The story's couple shares a romantic kiss as they are crowned, fulfilling the genre's expectations.
The pink-haired girl is identified as an insignificant extra standing near the main characters. A black ribbon adorns a portrait of Lilith La Noella, who was unjustly executed due to political schemes. Lilith cries in despair after realizing she has been reincarnated into the body of this doomed minor character.
She decides she has no interest in seeking forgiveness or attention from her neglectful family.
In a flashback, the dark-haired Duke Noella tells young Lilith that he will ignore her because her birth caused her mother's death.
Lilith angrily rejects this tired, tragic backstory, questioning why her birth should be considered a crime.
A silver-haired man gazes down at Lilith in a classic romantic setup.
Lilith holds a sign protesting the arrogant male lead trope, declaring her intention to live a life of total freedom.
Leaving behind a suitcase and a farewell note, Lilith prepares to abandon her former life. Standing triumphantly with her luggage, Lilith celebrates her newfound independence. She dedicates herself to academic pursuits, eventually earning both her bachelor's and master's degrees.
Lilith enjoys a quiet moment with tea, reflecting on the hard work she put in to secure her future.
Her peaceful life is interrupted by desperate pleas for her to save the Empire as its doctor. A golden-leaf tree stands against a bright sky, its change in color signaling a dire crisis.
Distressed citizens beg Lilith to help while she tries to maintain her boundaries, insisting on her specific needs.
Overwhelmed by the pressure to save the world, Lilith retreats in frustration as others continue to beg for her intervention.
A heavy iron gate slams shut, symbolizing the loss of the freedom she worked so hard to achieve. Lilith attempts to sneak away with her suitcase once again to reclaim her liberty.
She is suddenly stopped by a tall, imposing figure who appears behind her.
Lilith turns around with a look of nervous apprehension. The silver-haired man looks at her with a deeply sad and pleading expression.
He clings to her dress like a lost puppy, making it impossible for her to leave.
Lilith laments her situation, wondering how her plans for freedom went so wrong.
The silver-haired man hugs Lilith tightly while complaining of thirst and demanding rainwater.
Lilith stands before the massive world tree as onlookers watch her with hope. She reaches out toward the golden branches of the mystical tree.
Witnesses praise her professional skill as the leaves of the tree begin to look healthy again.
Lilith closes her eyes, seemingly resigned to her current fate.
The world tree itself speaks to her, demanding that she go get more water. Lilith is annoyed as the tree continues its constant chattering and demands for hydration. Despite her frustration, Lilith forces a smile while explaining she spent the entire night tending to the tree.
Lilith's forced smile strains as the tree ignores her efforts and simply demands more water.
The tree threatens to wither away if she tries to get help from the Imperial family, leaving her horrified. The tree suggests total annihilation if its demands aren't met.
The scene shifts to the exterior of a grand, white Imperial palace.
Panic spreads as voices cry out about the world tree beginning to wither.
Lilith tries to walk away while a man in white robes collapses in shock behind her.
Clenching her fist in despair, she hears the warning that the entire world faces destruction.
Defeated and tearful, Lilith finally relents and agrees to fetch more water.
Historical tapestries illustrate the legend of the world tree and its role in the Empire's 1,000-year history. A formal text box explains that the Empire's foundation rests upon the support of 4 ducal houses.
A maid carries a newborn baby through a dark hallway in the Noella estate.
A man grieves over a pink-haired woman in a scene of tragic loss marking the birth of Lilith La Noella.
Tragic labor claims the duchess's life.
Young Lilith stands before her parents' portrait. She exists as a forgotten ghost.
Death ends her first tragic life. Political schemes lead to her downfall.
False accusations seal her dark fate. Accusing hands point at the condemned girl. Fire consumes the falsely accused extra. The pink-haired woman slams her book, noting that the novel barely gave her character a backstory. Lilith laments her reincarnation as a minor character.
She reflects on her struggle for freedom.
A confident smile masks her determination. Freedom blooms around the triumphant doctor.
Lilith celebrates her new life as a doctor of horticulture after studying to reclaim her independence.
A peaceful laboratory stands under clear skies. Passing neighbors greet the pink-haired doctor as she heads into her laboratory for the day. Determination flashes in the doctor's eyes. Lilith prepares for a busy workday. The pink-haired woman tells the dark-haired maid that leaving her family's territory was her best decision. The dark-haired maid, Genya, startles Lilith while announcing that it is time to review the day's appointments.
Genya lists requests regarding infested trees and large flower beds while Lilith listens in her garden lab.
Lilith tells Genya to book all the appointments despite her exhaustion from the growing waitlist.
Genya whispers that a client offered extra gold for emergency care, prompting Lilith to prioritize that job immediately.
Genya mentions a noble's plan to visit in person, but Lilith insists such a gesture is unnecessary. Sipping her tea, Lilith instructs Genya to handle all incoming visitors and correspondence on her behalf. Genya calls her unusual, but Lilith simply asks what she means while enjoying her quiet moment.
Lilith rejects being called a lady, while Genya notes her habit of turning away grateful noble clients.
Genya points out that despite her love for money, Lilith strictly refuses any gifts beyond her set fees.
The dark-haired maid questions if all this effort is truly just to remain independent from her family.
Genya sighs as Lilith explains that her hard-earned degrees grant her legal rights regardless of her noble birth. Lilith clenches her fist while recalling the manic intensity of her 6 years of academic study.
She triumphantly recounts earning her bachelor's, master's, and doctorate in horticulture to secure her future.
Genya provides a deadpan celebratory clap. Genya notes that Lilith strategically chose an unpopular field of study to avoid the attention of other nobles. Lilith relaxes and praises Genya for being her most perceptive and reliable right-hand woman. Kicking her feet up, Lilith expresses her deep disdain for formal thank you visits from the nobility. A moment of hard-earned peace arrives. Lilith dreams of a life far from the palace, while a blurry figure watches her from the distance. The sun smiles over the house. Genya interrupts the peaceful morning to present one final letter that she claims is impossible to handle alone. The dark-haired maid reveals with a grim expression that the final request has come from the Imperial palace. Lilith chokes on her tea in shock, unable to believe the Imperial family is contacting her. Genya insists that the pink-haired doctor must be the one to open a letter of such high political importance. An elegant golden seal is broken. The letter guarantees a massive success bonus for the doctor's services and requests an immediate reply. Lilith and Genya stare at the letter in stunned silence as the gravity of the situation sinks in.
The doctor grips the official sands.
Terror and disbelief filled a row. Standing outside the lab, both women desperately claim they never saw the letter in hopes of avoiding the palace.
Lilith declares her intention to write a formal letter of refusal immediately to preserve her peaceful life.
Lilith shouts through the door demanding that the Imperial letter be returned immediately. Genya notes the post office is closed for a holiday, fueling the doctor's frustration.
Determined to preserve her peace, Lilith decides to send her refusal via express mail.
Bursting through the door, the doctor calls for Genya to prepare their carriage.
Lilith freezes in shock upon encountering a tall, silver-haired man at her doorstep.
The mysterious visitor offers a knowing and strikingly handsome smile.
A close-up reveals Lily's eye wide with recognition and absolute terror.
The man offers to escort her, prompting Lilith to slam the door in his face. Trembling behind the wood, Lilith panics after seeing a ghost from her past.
She recalls breaking off her engagement with him years ago to avoid her fate. A radiant memory depicts the silver-haired noble in a hero's light.
The imposing man is identified as the powerful Duke Edrion la Arkshad. Lilith screams in internal agony, realizing her plan for freedom is crumbling.
Forcing herself to be professional, Lilith reopens the door to confront the Duke.
Edrion performs a perfect knight salute, gracefully taking and kissing her hand. The Duke gazes at her with an intensity that leaves Lilith breathless. Official records identify him as the head of the prestigious House of Arkshad.
He is the formidable commander of the Imperial Guard Knights.
Lilith recognizes him as a hero so famous he is impossible to avoid. She laments that in the original novel, this man was her husband.
To the reincarnated doctor, Edrion is nothing more than a living death flack.
Lilith desperately scans her surroundings while mentally plotting a swift escape.
She awkwardly questions what brings such a high-ranking noble to the countryside.
Edrion places a hand on the doorframe, stating he came to escort her. He looms over the pink-haired doctor, physically trapping her with his presence. Edrion warns her to be careful, causing Lilith's heart to race with anxiety.
The mention of a trip to the Imperial Palace leaves Lilith horrified. She tries to feign ignorance, questioning why she would ever need to go there.
Lilith mentions her academic status, hoping for an exemption from royal duties. Edrion brings up the letter, subtly accusing her of ignoring the summons.
A substitute gardener from the palace is already prepared to take her place.
Lilith grows suspicious of how meticulously the palace has planned her capture.
Edrion's amused expression suggests he is enjoying her futile attempts to lie.
The Duke triumphantly points out that she obviously read the letter after all.
Resigned to her fate, Lilith sits gloomily inside the Duke's lavish carriage.
She despairs at being dragged back into the center of the main cot.
Edrion confirms with a smile that she no longer has the option to refuse.
Lilith mourns the loss of the quiet life she worked so hard to build. Genya sits contentedly nearby, having been bribed into coming along for double pay. Clenching her hand, Lilith tries to calm her nerves for the journey ahead.
The doctor resolves to stay vigilant to survive the coming political storm.
Lilith reflects on the dark, intrigue-filled nature of the novel she inhabited. In the original story, a power-hungry tyrant frames the protagonists for treason. Soldiers are shown seizing the red-haired heroine on the king's orders. The blonde male lead is similarly arrested and dragged away in chains.
Romance fantasy tropes dictate that the heroes must eventually overcome such trials.
The original leads are shown celebrating their victory over the fallen tyrant.
They eventually take the throne together, fulfilling their destiny as rulers.
This triumphant coronation marked the conclusion of the story's first major arc.
Lilith looks out the carriage window, fearing her own role in the sequel.
Political battles begin between rival factions.
Lilith maintains a nervous smile.
She looks for a lucky break. Lilith notes she has time to avoid death flags since the throne was recently usurped. She forces herself to stay positive.
Lilith remains anxious about the pause.
She finds Edrion's sudden kindness burdensome. Edrion offers to adjust the temperature or vibration for her comfort.
He fidgets like an anxious puppy.
Lilith wonders why he is restless.
She questions his deviation from the novel.
She insists that she is fine. Edrion shifts to a serious inquiry.
Lilith asks why the palace truly needs a garden manager. The carriage journey continues in silence.
Edrion considers how to answer her.
Lilith recalls the suspicious Imperial summons.
She suspects the letter was a chop.
Edrion reveals the problem is the world tree.
Lilith reacts with absolute shock.
Jenya sleeps through the heavy conversation.
The doctor is left speechless.
Legend describes the tree as a divine creation.
Edrion confirms that she knows the tree well.
Pure terror strikes the pink-haired woman.
Lilith questions her specific recruitment while Edrion notes that previous restoration attempts by others failed.
She regrets graduating university so young.
Edrion claims the visit is a formality.
He offers a dazzlingly handsome smile.
Lilith is overwhelmed by his aura.
She internally screams about her predicament.
They arrive at the Grand Pass. Lilith steps out from the cag. The reality of her arrival sinks in.
Edrion assists the visibly exhausted doctor.
Lilith looks toward the sacred site.
Her eyes widen in pure amazement.
She finally sees the glowing world tree.
Lilith finds the tree's appearance mystical.
She notes the leaves look relatively healthy.
The doctor checks for root damage. An angry voice insults her suddenly.
The voice demands she stop touching.
Lilith pulls back in calm shock.
The voice threatens her entire clan. Stunned silence follows the aggressive dat. The tree demands total annihilation. The massive tree looms over her.
Lilith is completely and utterly confused.
She tells Edrion that everything was fine.
Lilith realizes the world tree is shouting at her while Edrion remains completely oblivious.
Edrion smiles at Lilith, prompting her to snap out of her thoughts.
Lilith confirms Edrion truly cannot hear the tree.
She looks up at him with a startled expression.
The Duke leads the doctor toward the group of specialists waiting by the tree.
Rinok, the lead specialist, modestly greets the newcomers alongside his colleagues.
Rinok introduces himself and welcomes Lilith Lenoella with great respect.
Lilith is puzzled when Rinok mentions the famous rumors surrounding her academic career.
A hand clenches tight as the tension rises. Rinok passionately praises Lilith for being a dedicated and brilliant model scholar.
He excitedly assumes she traveled to the capital solely for her botanical research.
Lilith notes the specialist's sudden and dramatic change in personality. She internally screams that he has completely misinterpreted her motives. She scoffs at the idea of having a genuine passion for research.
Lilith recalls her graduation day when she focused only on basic horticulture to avoid conflict.
Her choice of study was purely strategic.
Rinok gazes at her with overwhelming admiration, much to her discomfort. She reaches out to inspect the tree's foliage.
Edrion interrupts the awkward exchange, encouraging Lilith to ask her technical questions.
Lilith holds up a discolored leaf and asks the men for their assessment.
Rinok insists the leaf's yellowing tint is its natural, healthy golden hue.
Lilith argues that the leaf is clearly sickly and dying, not golden.
She questions why they don't see the obvious health issues with the tree. Lilith examines the parched earth, noting the soil is dangerously dry. She is stunned when Rinok admits they only water the tree twice a year.
Lilith explodes in anger after learning they only use a single bowl of holy water.
She finds the refusal to use lake water because it's polluted ridiculous.
Lilith suggests pruning the tree, sending the specialists into a state of shock.
The priest trembles at the thought of cutting the sacred world tree's limbs.
Lilith grows weary of their incompetence while they panic over her suggestions.
She releases a terrifying aura, silencing the specialists with her authoritative horticultural knowledge.
A thunderous shout echoes through the garden.
Lilith demands they immediately fetch water to save the dying tree. The terrified specialists flee to carry out her orders as she continues to yell.
Edrion offers to assist her personally as the other men scurry away.
Lilith disparages her own academic work while preparing for the difficult task ahead. She looks at the tree, determined to prevent the tragic fate it caused her previously. Carrying a ladder and basket, Lilith approaches the trunk to begin work. She prepares to climb, her focus entirely on the tree's restoration. Lilith puts on her gloves, ready to get her hands dirty.
She worries that her involvement might lead to an even earlier tough.
The doctor unsheathes a pair of sharp, ornate pruning shears. With a determined smile, Lilith prepares to perform surgery on the world tree. The exhausted specialists complain about the heavy labor Lilith has assigned them. They arrive with a barrel of water, but Rinok senses something shocking above. The men squint upward, trying to see what is happening in the canopy. They are horrified to see Lilith high up on the ladder, ready to prune. Rinok watches in silent, sweating anticipation as the shears hover over a branch. The sharp blades close around a limb of the divine tree.
The specialists scream in terror as branches fall from the sacred world tree.
The specialists scream in panic as the pink-haired doctor begins her work.
A single branch falls from the divine tree.
Night settles over the capital city's night barracks.
Lilith feels immensely satisfied while the specialists faint behind her. She worries the palace will punish her for her methods.
The doctor turns to find Duke Arkshad standing behind her.
He claims helping her is his greatest joy in life.
Lilith asks if he has been waiting outside her door.
Edrion claims he only stepped out after hearing her arrive. The Duke mentions his desire to combine their living quarters.
He bids her a gentle goodnight while Lilith remains stunned.
She screams internally at his casually delivered, terrifying suggestions. A nagging feeling of frustration persists in her mind.
Lilith reaches out and grabs the silver-haired man's hand. She asks him to stay and talk for a moment.
She reminds him that they are no longer a couple.
The moon glows brightly over the silent castle barracks.
They sit together for tea while Lilith compliments her rune.
Edrion offers to swap rooms if she is at all dissatisfied.
Lilith feels embarrassed by the Duke's excessive high-class hospitality.
Edrion watches her with an incredibly soft and gentle expression.
He asks her to reveal what is truly on her mind. The pink-haired woman hesitates, staring down at her tea.
She resolves to be honest about her growing confusion.
Lilith admits she doesn't understand why he's being kind.
Her hands tremble as she tries to find words.
She recalls the day their families forced their original engagement.
Lilith remembers the moment she realized she had been reincarnated.
She describes her desperate attempts to make herself physically ill. Her goal was to weaken her body to escape marriage.
A doctor informs Edrion that Lilith is unfit to be a wife.
Lilith waited with bated breath for the final medical verdict.
Anxiety and sweat covered her as the doctor spoke. Her hands shook while holding the official medical record. She imagined a grand celebration to mark her successful scheme.
Lilith wept with pure joy over her supposed legal freedom.
She confesses that his current behavior is deeply unsettling. Edrion claims to be confused by her line of questioning.
The Duke stares at her with intense, unblinking focus.
He prepares to explain the reality of their current status.
Edrion explains his lifelong commitment to taking care of her.
Lilith shouts that their engagement was already officially annulled.
A wave of absolute horror and realization washes over her.
Edrion maintains a calm demeanor while preparing his next words.
He reveals that the annulment papers were never actually filed.
Lilith realizes she has been living under a massive lie.
Terror strikes the doctor as she processes this betrayal. The hope of her annulment literally flies away in her mind.
With a charming smile, Edrion confirms the annulment was cancelled.
Lilith reflects on the day she was unknowingly tricked by everyone.
Edrion explains his father had already obtained Lilith's signature before he could intervene.
He reveals that he eventually forced his father to hand over the annulment papers.
The silver-haired man's father told him to choose what was best for their family.
War broke out shortly after, preventing the papers from being officially filed.
The war tragically marked the last time Edrion ever saw his father.
He admits the chaos of battle made submitting the annulment to court impossible.
Lilith is horrified to learn her freedom was lost to the very war she avoided.
Edrion remains silent as she processes the shocking truth.
He apologizes for the heavy news, but she asks him to continue his story.
The Duke expresses genuine happiness at finally being able to speak with her.
He mentions visiting her academy to offer her a choice, which she doesn't recall.
He recalls a fierce blizzard that day and asks about her former personal maid.
A heavy silence falls as he mentions the maid's involvement.
Edrion was blocked from entering or delivering his letter that day.
He explains the maid claims she was too busy with her studies to see him.
Lilith recalls telling the maid to send all guests away during her academic stress. She remembers being overwhelmed by work and unknowingly turning him away.
Lilith is crushed by the realization she left him out in a deadly blizzard.
The pink-haired woman offers a sincere and pained apology for her past actions.
Edrion admits the rejection hurt but smiles gently to ease her guilt.
He takes her hands, insisting that the past no longer matters. The atmosphere becomes intimate as he leans closer to her.
He gently releases her hand as the conversation reaches its end.
Edrion stands to leave, advising her to rest as the night has grown late.
Lilith suddenly grabs his sleeve, desperate to keep him there for a moment longer. He pauses and looks back at her with surprise.
She gazes up at him with an expression of pure, shimmering hope.
At the palace, officials loudly protest Lilith's supposed blasphemy against the World Tree.
A voice demands she be driven out as a heretic immediately.
The protesters call for her to be banned from ever setting foot on Imperial soil. A hand snaps a quill in frustration at the constant complaints. Empress Aitana fumes over the endless reports about Lady Noella from her terrified advisors.
The red-haired empress grows weary of everyone begging for forgiveness for their failures. She demands a clear explanation of what Lady Noella actually did.
Ornate floral decorations frame the tense Imperial meeting.
Renock explains that Lilith used lake water and pruned branches, shocking the Empress.
The Empress remembers how her idiot little brother insisted on recruiting the doctor.
A flashback shows Edrion pestering his sister about finding a perfect caretaker.
He continuously interrupts her work to pitch his recommendation for the job.
Edrion's eyes sparkle as he presents Lilith as the Empire's greatest horticulture scholar.
Back in the present, Renock gestures wildly toward the garden.
The Empress gasps as she notices a strange phenomenon in the distance.
The world tree emanates a divine, blinding golden glow across the palace grounds.
Renock excitedly confirms that the tree has become incredibly vibrant after Lilith's treatment.
Aitana realizes that the tree's sudden restoration is truly happening.
She wonders if the tree ever looked this healthy under previous managers.
The Empress recalls the sacred tree looking half dead before Lilith's ride.
She immediately demands to know Lady Noella's current location.
The Empress moves with purpose, clearly intending to meet the woman personally.
At the barracks, Lilith holds tight to Edrion's sleeve, refusing to let him go.
Edrion looks visibly distressed, sweat beading on his forehead as he processes the tension of their conversation.
The silver-haired man is confused by Lilith's request, questioning the necessity of her staying awake late into the night.
Lilith observes his sudden irritation, wondering why her simple statement about not sleeping provoked such a defensive reaction.
She imagines a scandalous scenario where she boldly invites him to stay, though the text confirms she never actually said it.
Lilith offers a nervous smile, realizing her previous wording may have come across far more suggestive than she intended.
She laughs off the awkwardness while secretly plotting to make him lose interest and delay their inevitable marriage.
Edrion's expression softens into a gentle, warm smile as he looks at the pink-haired woman before him.
He suggests that she should rest, noting that the long journey to the capital must have left her completely exhausted.
Lilith calls out to the Duke, desperate to clarify her request and ask for a favor before he departs.
Edrion teases her about her previous remark, causing Lilith to blush furiously and beg him to forget she ever spoke.
Beneath the glow of an ornate chandelier, Lilith prepares to ask him for a significant personal favor.
She asks him to keep her arrival in the capital a secret, standing nervously by the tea table as she speaks. Lilith emphasizes her point, her hand trembling slightly as she prepares to name the specific person she wants to avoid. She clenches her dress tightly, the physical gesture revealing the deep anxiety she feels about her current situation. The Duke agrees without hesitation, a faint smile playing on his lips as he accepts her condition.
When Lilith wonders why he isn't more curious, Edrion credits his sister for teaching him that young ladies always have secrets.
He steps closer, offering a compromise of his own in exchange for protecting her privacy within the palace. A white teapot sits on the table, shimmering faintly as the intimate atmosphere in the room begins to shift. Edrion reaches out and takes her hand in his touch both firm and incredibly gentle.
Lilith looks up at him with wide, startled eyes, her heart racing as she addresses him by his formal title.
Blushing deeply among floral imagery, Lilith is stunned when he asks her to simply call him Arkshad from now on. He leans in close, his focus entirely on her as he makes a request that only the doctor can fulfill. The silver-haired man watches her with a soft, affectionate gaze that leaves Lilith completely breathless and confused. Their faces draw close together, the tension between them thick as they linger in the quiet, dim room.
Holding her hands, Edrion explains that his request regarding her safety is one that only she can grant.
He warns her about the Shadow Faction's activity, a name that immediately triggers Lily's memories of the original story. Lilith tries to recall the specific details of the Shadow Faction from the novel she read in her past life. She remembers that this group was exiled a millennium ago after a brutal conflict with the Arkshad ducal house. A dark, hooded figure represents the faction's long-standing hatred for Edrion's noble lineage and their ancestral home. Lilith recalls that the members of this dangerous group are physically marked by their distinct, piercing red eyes. Edrion instructs her to avoid all strangers and to find him immediately if she encounters anyone suspicious in the barracks. She realizes that being his public fiancé on paper makes her a prime target for his family's ancient, vengeful enemies.
Lilith stares ahead in dread, concluding that her current status offers absolutely no benefit to her personal survival.
High above the silent castle, she acknowledges his warning while worrying about the complications of her new life. After leaving her room, Edrion's expression turns cold as he senses someone lurking nearby in the dark hallway. Jeffrey wanders the corridor, confused about the Duke's sudden room change while searching for his superior officer. Before he can react, Edrion lunges from the shadows and pins his adjutant to the floor at sword point. The Duke demands to know what Jeffrey is doing there, while the terrified adjutant identifies himself as Edrion's subordinate. Jeffrey panics and pleads for his captain to lower the blade now that his identity has been confirmed. He quickly explains a matter regarding magic tower glasses, though Edrion remains skeptical and keeps the sword at his neck. The Duke reacts with suspicion when Jeffrey mentions his sister's involvement in the recent reports he received. Edrion punishes his adjutant with 100 laps for loitering near Lilith's door, much to Jeffrey's vocal frustration.
The next morning, Empress Aitana explains that Edrion prevented her from visiting the doctor the previous night.
Sitting regally among red roses, the Empress confronts Lilith about the controversial pruning of the world tree. Lilith sits across from her, sweating and trembling under the weight of the Empress's intense, judging gaze. The pink-haired woman is paralyzed by fear, genuinely wondering if she will survive this high-stakes Imperial audience.
Aitana reveals that many officials are demanding punishment for the perceived outrage Lilith committed against the sacred tree. A close-up of the Empress's glowing golden eye highlights her formidable presence and the gravity of Lilith's situation. She demands a clear explanation for the doctor's actions, reminding her that her horticultural methods were considered blasphemous. Lilith cowers, recalling that Aitana is a legendary figure whose fiery temper is feared even by the Emperor. A small, brown, seed-like creature with leaves peeks out curiously from a pink fabric. Lilith wakes up startled by two sprout-like creatures hovering near her and following her around. Empress Aitana stares down at the nervous doctor with a cold and demanding expression. Under a massive chandelier, Lilith admits she is aware her recent actions were blasphemous. The pink-haired woman firmly declares that she does not regret what she did to the tree. Aitana and Lilith sit across from each other at a tea table for a formal audience.
Lilith explains that her professional pride as a horticulturist prevented her from ignoring a dying tree.
The Empress questions her motives for blasphemy, while the doctor offers a nervous, stuttering reply. Aitana warns Lilith that despite her reasons, there are lines that must not be crossed. She notes that expulsion is the standard punishment for blasphemy, but offers an alternative path.
The red-haired Empress slides a formal document across the table toward the trembling doctor.
Aitana tells Lilith to read the detailed conditions within the contract before signing it.
Lilith is visibly stunned by the Empress's offer of a chance to redeem herself. The Empress emphasizes that Lilith must take legal responsibility and urges her to review the terms. Lilith holds the handwritten paper with gloved hands, her anxiety clear in her hesitant movements. She recognizes she has no choice but to comply with the Imperial order.
Lilith addresses the Empress formally as she begins to process the daunting task ahead.
The contract states that Lilith must make the world tree bloom for the first time in a millennium. The pink-haired woman is floored by the impossible requirement of blooming a 1,000-year dormant tree. Aitana declares that any blasphemy is permitted if it leads to the tree successfully blooming.
Lilith is horrified to find that the penalty for failure is the annihilation of her clan.
The Empress explains the harsh terms were a compromise reached with the angry palace officials. A speech bubble indicates the Empress is not particularly worried about the mission's difficulty. Aitana smiles confidently, expressing her intuition that Lilith will successfully make the tree bloom. The doctor stands paralyzed with fear, staring at the document that endangers her entire family.
Outside the palace, Lilith groans in despair as she grapples with her life-threatening responsibility.
As Lilith walks away, the Empress watches from a window, thinking about her brother Edrion's report. Aitana wears a knowing, triumphant smile while observing the retreating doctor.
A man with long blonde hair approaches the Empress, asking if something good has happened.
The newcomer is identified as Kairos Lucillaria, the powerful emperor of the empire. The emperor notes that someone interesting has finally caught his sister's attention. He leans in curiously, asking which noble family this new individual belongs to. A text bubble identifies the woman who caught the Empress's eye as Lady Noella. Lilith hauls a heavy bucket of water while the sprout creatures follow her across the field. She wonders if her previous pruning of the world tree caused these strange entities to appear.
Overwhelmed by her bad luck, Lilith screams about nothing in her life going as planned.
The massive world tree communicates its desperate need for water to the startled doctor. Lilith prepares to water the tree, her hand submerged in the cool water of the bucket. She splashes the water onto the tree while the spirits express their surprise and joy. The physical strain is evident as Lilith struggles to move the large wooden water bucket. Frustrated, she blames the tree for her current trouble while shouting and working. The tree's voice bubbles describe the water as cold but very refreshing. Exhausted by the manual labor, Lilith collapses onto the green grass and pants heavily. She tries to be grateful that her entire clan wasn't immediately executed for her actions. Lilith realizes she can converse with the tree and questions why it is acknowledging her. She regrets acknowledging the tree's voice and wishes she had ignored it to the end. Lilith asks the tree if it can talk to other trees or other people. She questions the tree's biological needs, wondering if mana could serve as a substitute for water.
The world tree stands vibrant and healthy under the sunlight, its green leaves shimmering.
Lilith looks up at the magnificent tree with sparkling eyes, mesmerized by its growth. The world tree questions Lilith's honesty as she remains silent. The pink-haired woman realizes the tree cannot be reasoned with. A branch shakes violently, demanding more water from the doctor. At the palace, reports confirm the Shadow faction has escaped. Duke Arkshad coldly commands his subordinates to lower their heads. The terrified men bow deeply while begging for his forgiveness. The silver-haired Duke appears weary and troubled by his duties. He reflects on the one person who ignored his status.
He remembers Lilith's warm smile during their first meeting.
She's the only person who saw his true self. His scarred hand clenches as his protective resolve hardens. He vows to protect the woman who once saved him.
Arkshad determines to make his side her safest sanctuary.
Lilith tentatively peeks into the room, calling for the Duke. She peeks through the door with a bright, cheerful expression. Arkshad's stern expression softens the moment he sees Lilith.
Lilith enters the room looking disheveled and slightly embarrassed.
The Duke rushes toward her as his cloak billows dramatically.
He drapes his large, warm cloak around her trembling shoulders. Lilith looks up at him, stunned by his sudden kindness. She recalls being splashed with water during her morning force.
Lilith argues with the tree about the amount of water provided.
The tree remains unsatisfied, demanding far more than a tiny bit.
Drenched and frustrated, Lilith shouts back at the demanding plant.
She questions why a sacred tree is so obsessed with water.
Lilith wonders why mana isn't sufficient for a transcendent being.
Sunlight glints off a single droplet on a vibrant leaf.
The tree begins to insult Lilith for her lack of understanding. It bluntly calls the pink-haired woman an absolute idiot.
Lilith fumes, indignantly reminding the tree of her medical credentials.
The tree tells the doctor to listen to its explanation.
It reveals its soul was transformed by a creator god's power.
Despite its grand origin, it still demands that she fetch water.
Lilith stares blankly as she processes the tree's arrogant logic.
She warns the tree not to hide behind mystical excuses. The tree grumbles about the arrogance of highly educated humans.
It launches into an overwhelming tirade about its long suffering.
The tree reminds Lilith that she was the one who woke it. It declares that she is now entirely responsible for its well-being. Lilith groans in despair at her new eternal responsibility.
Back in the office, Lilith smiles while wearing Arkshad's cloak.
The Duke asks her to explain what happened to her. Lilith admits she slipped while trying to water the tree.
Arkshad expresses immediate concern, checking to see if she's hurt. He offers to assist her with the heavy water buckets. They share a warm, quiet moment together in his office.
Arkshad looks puzzled by her resilience and sudden appearance.
Tense energy surrounds the Duke as he watches her intently.
He promises that a warm drink will help her recover.
Lilith graciously thanks him as they sit down to talk.
Lilith takes a quiet sip of her tea in the office.
Edrion drinks his tea while Lilith observes that he seems unusually calm.
The atmosphere remains light as the two continue their private tea session.
Lilith admits she was merely caught off guard by the current situation.
The pink-haired woman stares ahead with a serious and focused expression.
Edrion offers a gentle, rare smile that softens his typically stern features.
The Duke's golden eyes intensify as he focuses his gaze on the doctor.
Jeffrey introduces himself as the adjutant and offers his physical assistance whenever needed. Edrion stands abruptly, claiming that a task requiring heavy lifting has just appeared.
The silver-haired man bluntly asserts his superior strength while Lilith offers a confused congratulations. Lilith wonders if the Duke is seeking a more specific reason to lend his aid. She explains she needs someone to help her gather rainwater, leaving Edrion momentarily stunned. Lilith humorously laments that she will die of overwork thanks to the demanding world tree.
She notes that rainwater is rich in nitrogen and minerals essential for healthy plant growth.
Lilith continues her scientific explanation, detailing how the water's pH level will nourish the tree.
The pink-haired woman pauses her lecture, looking down with a thoughtful sigh.
Edrion remains silent, his expression unreadable as he processes the doctor's botanical expertise.
The Duke's face flushes a deep red as his composure begins to crack.
Lilith's blue eye widens in surprise as she notices his sudden change in demeanor.
Overwhelmed by his emotions, Edrion leans forward and buries his face in his hand. He looks up with a persistent blush, his gaze fixed intently on the startled doctor.
Edrion firmly commands Lilith to come to him for help instead of seeking out Jeffrey.
The Duke remains visibly flustered as he tries to maintain his authoritative presence. Lilith is caught off guard by his sudden and intense insistence.
The pink-haired woman is reminded of a truth she had almost forgotten. She sets her teacup down on the saucer with a soft, decisive click.
Lilith privately acknowledges that Edrion is an exceptionally handsome man.
She drinks her tea rapidly to hide her growing embarrassment and rising heart rate.
Lilith recalls that in the original story, the Duke was a celebrated social idol.
A close-up of Edrion's golden eye highlights his sharp and predatory gaze.
Lilith reminds herself that this man is a danger to her life despite his looks.
A hand reaches out to a door as someone peeks curiously into the room.
Palace staff whisper in shock about witnessing the notoriously cold captain smile so shyly. A terrified soldier trembles, fearing for his life because the captain smiled yet again.
A guard asks Jeffrey if it is truly so bizarre for their leader to show emotion.
Jeffrey laughs heartily while wrapping an arm around the shoulders of his fellow soldier.
A dark, bloody vision depicts the Duke as a ruthless demon who crawled from hell.
Jeffrey jokingly explains that the terrifying image was merely a toned-down, child-friendly version.
Back in the office, Edrion warmly asks if there is any other way he can assist.
Jeffrey peeks around a doorway, enthusiastically offering to carry Lilith's things during her town trip.
Edrion steps in and suggests that they should go to town together instead.
After Lilith departs, Edrion punishes a groaning Jeffrey while reflecting on the doctor's absence.
Back at the quarters, a maid asks Lilith if she is really going out with the Duke.
The maid is confused, recalling that Lilith had originally requested Jeffrey's escort.
Lilith cryptically mentions that much has happened while the maid acknowledges the Duke's superior protection.
A close-up shows a finger poking a small, round creature that lets out a soft peep.
The maid holds the sprout creature, annoyed by the constant noise it has been making.
Lilith identifies it as a spirit from the tree, though the maid remains skeptical of such claims. The doctor instructs the maid to keep the creature confined to the quarters during her absence.
Lilith offers a bright, cheerful smile as she prepares to depart for her trip.
Lilith accidentally bumps into the Duke's solid chest.
Edrion catches her and asks if Hugh's all right.
The pink-haired woman is momentarily dazed by his radiance.
The Duke suggests they depart for their trip together.
Their ornate carriage travels through a lush green forest.
They arrive at a vibrant and beautifully developed capital city. Lilith peeks out the window, amazed by the downtown scenery. She reflects on how much the capital has improved lately.
Sunlight shines over the town's charming European-style architecture.
Lilith attributes the city's success to the protagonist couple's administration.
She initially planned to return to her quarters very quickly.
The peaceful atmosphere makes her want to explore a bit more.
Edrion notices her intense interest in the passing city streets.
He kindly asks if she would like some fresh air. Lilith politely declines his offer to walk around the city.
She tells herself to snap out of her distracted state.
The doctor views the dazzling Duke as her greatest trial. Chibi Lilith lets out an indignant huff of air. Edrion agrees to return immediately after her work is finished.
The scene transitions to the exterior of a local shop. A merchant boasts about the high quality of his shop skins.
He questions if the doctor is interested in horticulture. The shopkeeper insists that she needs more nutrients and fertilizers.
He condescendingly suggests a list for simple flower arranging instead.
Lilith insists on getting only the items on her list.
Gritting her teeth, she clarifies the tools are for trees. Edrion looks on with a dark and increasingly annoyed expression.
The silver-haired man's fist clenches in visible irritation. He slams the counter, calling the man's meddling presumptuous.
Edrion warns the terrified merchant about his long tongue.
Lilith worries that the Duke's temper will actually kill someone. She reaches out and grabs the Duke's dark sleeve.
Lilith uses a casual nickname to tell him to stop.
The Duke is stunned into silence by her informal address.
Lilith looks up at him with a sincere and concerned gaze. She offers him a bright and incredibly disarming smile.
Edrion turns away as a deep blush covers his face. The merchant nervously offers to ring up their purchases immediately.
A close-up shows their feet as they walk away together. Lilith follows the fast-walking Duke out of the shop.
She notes he has been unusually quiet since they left.
The pink-haired woman hurries to keep up with his pace.
Lilith calls out, asking the Duke to walk alongside her.
Edrion stops in his tracks and looks back, bewildered.
Lilith stares at him while wondering about his odd behavior. Overwhelmed by his feelings, Edrion buries his face in his hand. He admits to himself that the situation is driving him crazy.
His hand clenches tightly around the handle of his back. The scene flashes back to the moment Lilith called him Ack.
Lilith apologizes for using such a casual nickname earlier.
Lilith explains that she used a nickname to avoid revealing the identity of the Empire's hero in public.
The pink-haired doctor reflects on her need for extreme caution while in the shopping district.
Lilith offers to stop using the nickname if it was uncomfortable, but Edrion surprises her by calling her Lily. The doctor is momentarily dazed and stunned by his sudden use of a familiar name. Edrion leans in close, his golden eyes focused intensely on the startled woman.
A flurry of romantic tension surrounds them as the Duke reaches out toward her face.
Edrion looks down with a persistent blush, softly repeating her nickname.
Their intimate moment is suddenly interrupted by the appearance of a massive, roaring bear.
A scarred, pink-haired man stands with the beast, leaving Lilith and Edrion in a state of chibi-style shock. Lilith screams in realization as she recognizes the muscular man as her brother.
A playful chibi bear nibbles on its master's head as he smiles.
Now inside a restaurant, Lilith laments the awkward coincidence of running into her family. Bear Noella, Lilith's biological brother, aggressively orders everything on the menu.
Lilith watches her brother with an expression of pure exhaustion and disbelief.
The scarred man relaxes, laughing heartily as he waits for their massive meal. Bear offers formal respect to Duke Arkshad, who insists they maintain their previous informal relationship.
The brother turns to Lilith and asks her if she has been well lately.
Lilith is momentarily taken aback and pauses before answering her brother.
Outside the window, Bear's mount, Jason, licks the glass in a terrifying display of affection. Bear boasts about his time with his precious beast while Lilith questions his definition of the word.
Lilith recalls how her brother's chaotic nature has remained exactly the same since their childhood.
A close-up shows the pink-haired man offering a warm and genuine smile. He compliments Lilith, noting that she looks much healthier and better than she did years ago.
Bear notes that this is their first meeting since she left home at age 12 to study.
Lilith looks thoughtful as she reflects on her past relationship with her brother. She acknowledges that while they were out of touch, there was never any bad blood between them.
Dark memories surface of servants blaming Lilith's birth for the death of the previous lady of the house.
A young, lonely Lilith overhears the cruel and resentful whispers of the household staff. The child grips her dress tightly, silently bearing the weight of the servants' accusations. Pushing the past aside, Lilith confirms to her brother that she has been doing well recently.
Bear focuses on his food, contentedly devouring a large sausage.
Edrion mentions he would have greeted the man sooner if he had known he was back in the capital.
Bear waves off the concern, explaining that his arrival was very recent.
When asked where she is staying, Lilith prepares to mention the knight's barracks.
Edrion interrupts her with a pointed cough, seeking a more familiar address.
Lilith is confused by the Duke's sudden and persistent interruption.
A hand gently pokes Lilith's arm to prompt her toward a specific answer.
The Duke radiates a dazzling, expectant charm that leaves the doctor completely bewildered.
Lilith stares at him, trying to process his odd and insistent behavior.
She restarts her explanation, identifying her host as Duke Arkshad.
Edrion immediately interrupts her again, firmly reminding her to call him Ed.
Lilith wonders if he is simply warning her to be careful with titles while they are in public.
The pink-haired woman hesitates as she tries to force herself to use the informal name.
Lilith finally announces she is staying with Ed, sending the Duke into a state of radiant bliss. Bear's expression shifts to one of serious and focused curiosity.
The scarred man admits there is something specific he has been wondering about.
Lilith and Edrion sit together, waiting expectantly for the brothers' question. Edrion explains that their planned annulment was stalled due to a simple paperwork issue.
Bear's stunned by the news, noting that he hadn't heard anything about this from their father.
Outside, the bear Jason begins a violent rampage, forcing the panicked staff to call for Bear's help.
The scarred, pink-haired man shouts an apology while rushing away, promising to ask their father about the situation later.
Edrion and Lilith stand in a heavy, awkward silence after her brother's chaotic departure.
Edrion apologizes for the man's behavior and suggests heading back, but then stops to ask if Lilith truly hasn't heard anything yet.
The pink-haired woman is stunned as she looks up at him with wide, confused eyes.
Edrion's expression turns somber as he identifies her father, Duke Noella, as the one who held the truth.
He explains that her father has been fully aware that the planned annulment was voided. The silver-haired man reveals that the Duke has known about the status of their marriage for a very long time.
Lilith is left reeling from the revelation as Edrion continues to explain the depth of the deception.
The scene shifts to the dark, towering architecture of a grand estate at night.
Lilith walks through a dimly lit hallway wearing a simple yellow nightgown. She reflects on the news, realizing that her father's actions actually make perfect sense.
A close-up shows her determined and cold expression as she pieced together the puzzle.
A silhouette reveals her father, Vincent Linoella, identified as the Empire's Minister of Justice.
Narrative text explains his role as the commander of the intelligence agency known as the Emperor's Ear.
Lilith quietly pushes open a heavy door to a dark room. She recalls how her father manipulated events to blind the tyrant Laser while assisting Edrion in the original story. She realizes he only helped because he saw Edrion's potential for immense future power.
Kneeling on the floor, Lilith begins to search through the contents of a cabinet.
She notes that a man in his position would never be ignorant of a document submitted to the court.
Lilith finds a thick envelope and realizes her father is acting solely for the benefit of the family's standing. She looks down in despair, realizing that her father views selling her off as a profitable transaction.
She reads a document stating that Edrion will grant her any one wish.
Lilith stares ahead with a sharp, defiant gaze, resolving to sabotage her father's calculations.
Her blue eyes sparkle with a mix of anger and cold determination.
She decides to use the Duke's promise to permanently break off their engagement.
She worries about her next task, wondering how to make the world tree bloom without the help of mana.
Chibi Lilith shakes her head vigorously to dispel her negative and stressful thoughts.
She is suddenly startled by a loud, rhythmic knocking on the bedroom door.
Lilith wonders if the visitors have already arrived as she slowly opens the door.
Edrion stands in the doorway holding a massive and vibrant bouquet of yellow flowers.
The silver-haired Duke offers a warm, soft smile that radiates a gentle light. Lilith is momentarily paralyzed by the unexpected and dazzling sight of him. She nervously asks what could possibly bring him to her room at such a late hour. A close-up of Edrion shows a faint blush creeping across his cheeks as he gazes at her.
Lilith asks if he is keeping watch on her, but the Duke immediately and firmly denies it.
Edrion apologizes for causing any misunderstanding and prepares to explain the real reason for his visit.
A close-up highlights the intricate and beautiful arrangement of the yellow sunflowers and daisies.
Lilith takes the bouquet, appearing stunned as a floral aura surrounds her.
Edrion admits that he was deeply bothered by the sad expression she had on her face earlier at the cafe.
Lilith is caught off guard, her blue eye widening in surprise at his sudden thoughtfulness.
The silver-haired man offers a kind, radiant smile as he minimizes the importance of his gift.
Lilith stares at the flowers, seemingly lost in thought and overwhelmed by the Duke's gesture. Edrion maintains his gentle, affectionate gaze while watching her reaction. He shifts his tone, mentioning that there is one more vital piece of information he needs to share. He presents a formal, golden envelope sealed with a thick red wax stamp.
Lilith holds the flowers and the mysterious letter, looking completely bewildered.
Internal narration confirms that the time for the main event has finally arrived. A glowing golden world tree is shown, marking the start of the next significant chapter, Fiorian. Narrative text explains that Fiorian is a major spring banquet hosted by the Empire's empresses.
Silhouettes of a couple dancing in a grand hall illustrate the scale of the upcoming palace event.
Lilith reflects on the fact that the original heroine, Aitana, will be presiding over this year's banquet.
Legend says Empress Aitana was once flawless until her reputation crumbled at her very first spring banquet.
A mysterious incident during the Fiorian event caused the once beloved Empress's public image to shatter.
Tension rises during the dramatic transition.
Edrion notes her dislike for crowds and offers her an out from the event.
Lilith insists on attending since she received a personal invitation from the Empress herself.
Lilith asks the Duke to be her escort since she knows few people in the capital.
The silver-haired man is visibly moved by her unexpected request.
Edrion expresses his genuine relief after she accepts his company for the ball.
The two share a polite goodbye as they prepare to retire for the night.
Lilith quietly shuts her bedroom door. Leaning against the door, Lilith considers the Duke's vast authority to operate independently on high-stakes missions. She smiles, realizing her goals will be far easier to achieve by remaining close to him. A cold crescent moon hangs high.
A mysterious cloaked figure watches over the capital from a distant, dark mountain peak.
The black-haired man with glowing red eyes watches the city with a chilling intensity.
A subordinate kneels before the Dark Lord to deliver an urgent report.
The leader inquires about their recent operation and receives confirmation that everything went perfectly.
The red-eyed man turns his gaze toward his loyal follower.
He recalls the persecution his people faced after being branded as shadows a millennium ago. His resentment grows as he blames the ancestors of Arkshad for betraying the ancient Holy Alliance.
Fury boils over as he clenches his fist in silent rage.
His glowing red eyes narrow with a promise of impending vengeance. Dark, ominous energy swirls around him.
The leader declares that it is finally time for their group to take action. The scene shifts as time passes.
A new bright morning begins.
Lilith struggles with manual labor a week after becoming the World Tree's official caretaker. Her endless chores feel absolutely overwhelming.
She takes a quick, refreshing break.
Exhausted, Lilith resolves to end her engagement and flee south to escape the grueling work.
The World Tree scolds her for slacking off so early in the day.
Lilith pauses to consider her response.
She explains her additional duties involving the Empress's floral arrangements for the ballroom. The tree questions her choice of extra work, but she views it as a professional necessity.
Lilith takes pride in being personally chosen by the Empress for such a prestigious task.
She prepares to leave the garden. The ancient tree expresses its loneliness and asks how long she will be gone.
It complains about the massive workload waiting for her return the next day. Lilith looks back, unimpressed by the tree's attempt to guilt-trip her with louse.
A tiny sprout creature appears, prompting Lilith to question if it has been deceived.
The little forest spirit weaks. Lilith realizes she still has the company of the small, energetic tree spirits.
She gently scoops up one of the round, brown forest creatures.
Lilith asks the World Tree why she has been saddled with childcare for its offspring.
The tree takes offense at the suggestion that the little sprout is its child. It explains that as a unique entity, it cannot reproduce and its seeds never grow.
The World Tree boastfully asserts its singular status as the only one of its kind.
Lilith is stunned to learn that the mighty World Tree is actually infertile.
She comes to the startling realization that she has effectively become a mother to the little sprout. Lilith realizes she has no choice but to take the sprout with her. She stares at the massive tree with a sudden, sinking realization.
Lilith looks up with a resigned and sparkly expression.
The World Tree orders her to perform babysitting duties.
A promotional banner features various characters and recruitment information.
The scene shifts to a grand, domed palace under a clear sky. The red-haired Empress Aitana shouts at her staff to ensure the hall is spacious.
A blonde man in white military attire hopes the Empress's mood doesn't affect Lilith. A blur of motion echoes through the long palace hallway. Lilith sprints through the corridor, panicking because she is running late.
She curses the World Tree for making her do chores until the very last minute.
Lilith finally reaches the ballroom where the Empress and the blonde Banquet. She offers a deep, formal bow and identifies herself as Lilith of Noella.
The blonde man watches the interaction with a look of high-strung anxiety.
The Empress greets her with a surprisingly warm and radiant smile. The blonde man notes the striking similarities between the Empress and her brother.
Vibrant yellow and orange floral arches decorate the palace's grand white pillars.
Lilith notes that the decorations consist of flowers rarely seen within the Empire.
Sunlight streams into the hallway, highlighting the extensive floral arrangements.
The Empress explains that the exotic flowers were imported specifically from the southern continent. Aitana offers a sidelong, satisfied smile as she discusses the decorations.
A bright, warm glow emanates from the golden flower clusters.
The Empress watches Lilith with a curious and slightly expectant gaze.
A close-up shows Lila's blue eye widening as she recognizes the flowers. The golden flowers, known as Flaminara, are the centerpiece of the upcoming banquet.
Lilith stares at the decorations, realizing she has found her target.
The Empress notices her change in demeanor and asks if there is a problem.
Lilith asks for forgiveness before delivering her shocking professional opinion.
She firmly suggests that every single Flaminara flower be removed immediately.
Narrative text recalls the successful start of the first banquet hosted by Empress Aitana.
The memory shifts to guests gasping for air and suffering from sudden dizziness.
Panic erupted as guests from the Duchy of Caravaldo collapsed from violent seizures.
The text explains that only the foreign guests were afflicted while local nobles remained fine. Lilith reflects on how this event led to Aitana being the primary suspect.
She realizes the Shadow faction used the merchant to set a trap for the Empress.
Nearby staff whisper in shock that Lilith wants to ruin the Empress's hard work.
Aitana looks genuinely bewildered and asks why she wants to remove the flowers.
Lilith explains that the Flaminara flowers can be highly poisonous depending on their usage.
The Empress narrows her orange eyes with a sharp and suspicious intensity.
She summons someone forward to address the serious accusation.
A man with a mustache bows and insists that the Flaminara is not poisonous. He claims the flowers are edible and suggests Lilith has simply confused them for something else.
Lilith stands her ground and repeats that the flowers can be used as poison. The man shouts that her claims are nonsense and accuses her of slandering a merchant.
The Empress looms over the kneeling man as Lilith remains silent.
The man with the mustache grits his teeth in a display of angry defiance.
To prove his point, the man aggressively stuffs a handful of flowers into his mouth.
He stares at Lilith with a crazed look while holding the petals.
A close-up shows him chewing the yellow flowers with a vengeful determination.
He swallows the flowers and smugly asks if a poisonous plant could be eaten so easily. The pink-haired woman is reprimanded for her dangerous claims, as the official mentions the Duchy of Caravaldo's use of Aurelia pollen in their sacred rituals.
Lilith stares ahead with wide-focused blue eyes as she processes the new information.
Narrative text explains that the Duchy's people carry the sacred flower at all times, while Lilith ponders the significance of Aurelia.
Lilith stands her ground as the red-haired Empress Aitana approaches her with a stern expression.
Text identifies Aurelia as a harmless, non-toxic plant native to the northern continent.
Lilith maintains a serious, contemplative expression while considering her next move.
A cluster of golden Flaminara flowers is shown, serving as the other half of the puzzle.
Dark energy surrounds the flowers as the text reveals that the combination of Flaminara and Aurelia creates a deadly poison.
The mustached man sweats profusely while furiously accusing Lilith of lying about his flowers.
Lilith warns that the resulting toxin causes respiratory failure and would be fatal to the Duchess of Caravaldo, leading the Empress to react with visible fury.
The merchant dismisses her claims as pure nonsense.
The man leans in aggressively, pointing a finger at Lilith while clutching the yellow flowers.
Lilith pulls out a small glass vial and calmly questions if he has truly never heard of the reaction.
Internal narration identifies a cloaked figure as Raven, the man responsible for the original Lilith's tragic end.
Realizing the merchant's connection to her enemy, Lilith demands that he swallow the contents of her vial.
The mustached man looks horrified as Lilith identifies the substance in the vial as Aurelia pollen.
Lilith maintains a pleasant smile as she explains the vial was a good luck charm from a former classmate. She consumes a sample of the powder herself, remarking that she never expected to use it in such a manner.
Lilith licks her lip and notes that the powder is completely tasteless. She holds the vial out to the panicked merchant, reiterating that the pollen itself is entirely harmless. The merchant realizes that since he has already eaten Flaminara, consuming the pollen will trigger a lethal chemical reaction. He trembles, knowing that refusing the offer will be seen as a confession of guilt. The silhouette of Empress Aitana looms over him, a terrifying reminder that he is trapped by Lilith's logic.
Gritting his teeth, the man groans in a state of trapped desperation.
Driven to madness, the man draws a hidden blade and lunges at Lilith, vowing to take her down with him. Lilith is frozen in shock as the attacker's hand reaches toward her face.
Edrion intervenes with brutal speed, slamming the would-be assassin onto the palace floor.
The silver-haired duke shouts Lilith's name, his face contorted with extreme worry and panic. Edrion pins the struggling man to the ground as the merchant screams for him to let go. Lilith stands perfectly still, her face pale as she recovers from the sudden assault. A subordinate knight rushes to the scene as Edrion continues to restrain the assailant at Layli's feet.
With golden eyes burning with rage, Edrion orders his men to imprison the attacker and uncover the true mastermind.
Guards drag the man away as he continues to scream his innocence and ignorance. Edrion holds Lilith's hands tightly, checking her for injuries while she assures him she is unharmed. The duke's expression remains one of intense concern as he looks over her.
Panicking, Edrion asks why she would eat the Aurelia pollen when she knew the danger of the Flaminara flowers.
Lilith blinks in surprise at his sudden outburst.
She realizes that Edrion must have been eavesdropping on her entire confrontation with the merchant.
Lilith calms him by revealing that the substance she actually consumed was a harmless fake.
She looks up at the duke with a gentle and reassuring smile. Lilith displays the vial again, explaining that she simply used a common medicine she always carries to test the man.
She admits the story about her academy classmate was a calculated lie to force a confession, and it worked perfectly.
Edrion's grip softens as he looks at her with a mixture of relief and dawning admiration. The silver-haired man blushes slightly, his expression turning tender as he gazes at her.
Lilith modestly claims it was a simple method that anyone could have devised under the circumstances.
Edrion takes her hands again, insisting that the crisis would never have been averted without her intervention.
Lilith turned her gaze away, feeling genuinely embarrassed by the duke's lavish plays.
She looks back at the silver-haired man, noticing his intense focus on her.
Narrative text confirms that thanks to her actions, Empress Aitana's political power will remain intact.
The text notes that the foreign guests will be safe while Aitana watches the aftermath with a cold, vengeful fury.
Lilith walks toward the gears of time, realizing she has finally begun to change her fate.
She clutches her chest, wondering if she is simply tense or if her weak body has suffered a shock.
Her thoughts continue as she wonders if her frail form was overwhelmed by the sudden events.
Lilith's blue eyes become heavy and strained from exhaustion.
She realizes she has lost all strength in her body as she begins to collapse.
A hand reaches out frantically to catch her.
Edrion catches Lilith as she loses consciousness, screaming her name in terror. The scene fades into a brilliant white light. A title screen transitions the story, punctuated by the soft chirping sounds of a small creature. Lilith remains asleep as the small creature continues to peep nearby.
Lilith jolts awake with a scream as the small brown sprout yells right in front of her face.
She looks at the sprout in confusion, remembering that she had left it behind with the world tree.
The camera focuses on the ornate, closed doors of the guest room.
Edrion enters the room, causing Lilith to startle and hide the sprout beneath her covers.
The Duke asks how she is feeling, and Lilith quickly responds that she is fine. Lilith looks nervous, thinking that she cannot let anyone discover the presence of the sprout.
Edrion looks down with a somber and pained expression in his golden heiss.
He stands by her bedside and offers a sincere apology to her.
Lilith looks up at him in surprise, asking why he would apologize to her.
Edrion admits that as her fiancé, he feels he failed in his duty to protect her properly.
Lilith dismisses his guilt, insisting she just fainted on her own, while Edrion clenches his fist in silent frustration.
Edrion tells her she needs rest, and Lilith offers her gratitude to him.
The Duke exits the room, passing a brown-haired maid who is entering.
The maid watches the Duke leave with a suspicious and calculating gaze.
The maid asks Lilith if she feels better, and Lilith confirms she is perfectly fine.
The maid mentions that the sprout remained by her side, hovering and worrying after she collapsed. She adds that Duke Arkshot has been extremely restless with worry since the incident.
Lilith is surprised by the news that Edrion was so deeply affected by her condition.
She looks away, thinking that such concern doesn't seem right.
Lilith looks down at the sprout resting in her hands.
Narration explains that in the original timeline, Edrion always treated Lilith with cold, formal distance.
Lilith wonders why the man is showing such intense worry for her now.
The maid reveals that the Empress even sent her personal physician to check on her, shocking Lilith.
Lilith wonders why the Empress would send her personal physician to treat someone of her status.
She clutches her gown, questioning what the real reason behind the Empress's gesture could be. She wonders if the Empress is actually trying to verify the severity of her illness.
Lilith recognizes that Aitana prioritizes the prosperity of House Arkshad above everything else.
Lilith fears that if she is judged unfit to produce an heir, her position will be in jeopardy. She realizes the Empress would use her poor health as an excuse to break the engagement.
Sunlight streams through a palace window, while narrative text confirms Lilith has no medical issues besides shock.
The Imperial physician tells Edrion that Lilith is healthy but needs rest and calming medicine.
Edrion stands alone in the hallway, looking deeply troubled.
He grits his teeth as the memory of her collapsing haunts him.
Edrion slams his fist onto his desk, lamenting that he failed to keep her safe in the palace. He clenches his fist, realizing his negligence nearly cost her life. A scarred knight enters the office as Edrion questions his own competence. The Duke turns with a dark expression and asks if the captured merchant has confessed. The scarred knight reports that the prisoner remains silent but confirms the Shadow faction's involvement.
Edrion walks toward the door, determined to force a confession out of the merchant.
The Duke and his knight prepared to deal with the conspirators, his eyes burning with cold rage.
Edrion's golden eyes narrow with a chilling, focused intensity.
Turning away, he vows to eliminate every threat that endangers Lilith. Lilith wears a look of blissful satisfaction as she prepares for a long-awaited break.
She cheers enthusiastically, celebrating her upcoming full week of vacation. Tucking herself into bed, Lilith notes that avoiding the crowded banquet is the ultimate reward. The maid informs Lilith that the Empress has ordered the complete removal of all Flaminara pollen. The maid remarks on how much the small sprout seems to like Lilith.
Lilith wonders how the sprout managed to follow her all the way from the world tree.
The tiny creature peeps happily as it rests on her blanket.
The maid suggests that they should give the creature a simple and catchy name. She pauses to consider a fitting name for the leaf-like creature.
Lilith is unimpressed and kicks the maid out after a terrible pun-based name suggestion. The maid exits, leaving Lilith to grumble over the poor naming attempt. Lilith sighs as she stares at the small creature sitting on her lap.
She asks the sprout why it has developed such an attachment to her.
Leaning in, she wonders if there is something specific the creature wants from her.
The sprout answers with a series of chirps while Lilith listens thoughtfully.
She decides to stop overthinking and finalizes a name for her new companion.
Lilith considers the sounds the creature makes and starts piecing together a name.
She asks the sprout if it likes it in happy. The small creature looks up at her with large, blinking eyes.
It appears deeply offended and saddened by the name suggestion.
The sprout continues to chirp its name-like sound with a distressed expression.
Lilith gives a warm, genuine smile, finally feeling a sense of peace. Ornate clusters of purple wisteria hang from the ceiling, signaling a shift in scenery.
A couple dances gracefully in the center of the grand ballroom under the floral decor.
Yellow flowers contrast with the elegant atmosphere of the Imperial event. A blonde-haired man stands alongside Empress Aitana, praising her performance at the banquet.
He notes that she handled her first major event with great skill.
Aitana clarifies that the success of the event is largely due to Lila's contributions. Her expression is somber as she considers the danger they narrowly avoided.
The blonde man listens intently to the Empress's words.
Narrative text emphasizes that the Imperial family now owes a great debt to Lilith. Both the Empress and her companion stop suddenly as a new figure approaches. A tall man with a dark beard and graying hair, Duke Noella, enters the scene.
Aitana watches him with a mixture of curiosity and wariness.
The Duke scans the room, appearing to be searching for someone specific. Aitana notes his wandering gaze and deduces his intent.
She formally recognizes the presence of Duke Noella, Lilith's father.
The Duke offers a deep, respectful bow to the moon of the Empire. He inquires about Aitana's well-being as they stand among the wisteria. Aitana compliments the successful festival and credits the wisteria decorations to Lilith.
Duke Noella dismisses the praise, claiming it is only natural for his house to serve.
The Empress narrows her eyes, sensing the Duke's cold and distant attitude toward his daughter.
The purple flowers sway as the conversation continues in the ballroom. Aitana recalls how Lilith was brought to the palace with low expectations.
She reflects on how hard Lilith worked to protect the world tree despite the public stigma.
The Empress thinks about Lilith's tireless dedication to her duties from morning until night. Narrative text praises the unexpected coolness and confidence Lilith displayed despite her small frame. Lilith looks on with a sharp, determined gaze, her hair flowing behind her. Narrative text emphasizes that Lilith firmly stood by her convictions during the crisis.
Empress Aitana tells Duke Noella that his daughter possesses a great deal of pride.
The red-haired Empress maintains a calm and thoughtful expression as she speaks of Lilith.
Text highlights the girl's unbreakable and innate sense of dignity as a noble.
Duke Noella stands tall while the Empress credits Lilith with grace befitting their house.
The gray-haired Duke looks contemplative, seemingly surprised by the high regard for his daughter.
Aitana recalls how Lilith inspected the banquet hall with coolness and confidence beyond her years. The Duke appears shaken as the Empress reiterates that Lilith never wavered in her convictions.
Aitana continues, noting the pride Lila shows in the tasks she has devoted herself to.
The Empress emphasizes that Lilith possesses a dignity that simply cannot be broken. A close-up shows the Duke's sturdy boots standing near the hem of the Empress's gown.
They stand together in the grand ballroom as Aitana finishes praising Lilith's noble responsibilities.
High above the palace, clouds drift across a deep blue and starry night sky. The moonless night remains quiet as the scene transitions away from the banquet. Lilith lies awake in bed with her sprout companion, unable to sleep after resting all day. She gets up and pushes open the large glass doors leading to her balcony. Lilith steps out and looks toward the bright, distant lights of the Imperial Palace. Her bright blue eyes widen as she takes in the scale of the celebration. Gazing at the illuminated dome, she whispers to herself that the sight is truly beautiful.
She leans on the railing, listening to the faint orchestral music carried by the wind. A flashback shows a younger Lilith under a tree lamenting being left alone for so long.
Lilith rests her head on her arms, wondering why she is suddenly thinking of the demanding tree.
She recalls how disappointed the world tree's voice sounded when she left it earlier.
Reaching a decision, she begins to fasten a dark, heavy cloak over her gown. Now hooded and disguised, Lilith prepares to slip out of her room unnoticed. Narrative text confirms that this secret excursion is essential for her engagement annulment plan. Radiant musical notes float through the starlit sky, echoing the joy of the banquet. The celebratory music drifts far across the city, reaching even the most distant gardens. The world tree watches the lights, thinking that humans seem to be having far too much fun.
The ancient tree sighs, remembering how it used to be a part of such festivities long ago.
A memory flickers of children laughing and playing happily beneath the tree's vibrant green canopy.
In the past, people would gather to tie bright red ribbons of hope onto the tree's branches.
Magical trails of light swirl through the forest as the tree reminisces about its glory days.
Massive roots coil deep into the hillside, anchoring the tree to the sacred earth. A tall spirit with golden hair tells a young child he keeps humans away for her sake. The mysterious, smiling man is partially obscured by the thick leaves of the forest.
He explains that he must protect her from all the threats hidden within the world.
The golden-haired figure places a gentle, protective hand on the child's head. In the present, a single vibrant leaf clings to a bare, shaking branch.
The world tree trembles with irritation, its leaves rustling violently as it vents its frustration.
It declares its utter lack of interest in the trivial laughter and chatter of inferior humans.
A lone leaf quivers on a branch as the tree's internal monologue becomes increasingly agitated.
A desperate knight prays fervently beneath the branches, begging for Lilith to recover fully.
He prostrates himself in the grass, terrified that his scary captain will be his end.
The tree crosses its branches like arms, noting how many humans have come to make wishes.
It reminds itself of a bitter lesson from the past. Humans can never be truly trusted.
Despite its cold words, the tree wonders where Lilith is hurting and why she collapsed. A shooting star streaks across the galaxy as the tree laments its inability to see her.
It suddenly stops its pining, sternly reminding itself that it is the great world tree.
The tree huffs indignantly, lying to itself that one measly human doesn't matter at all.
A pale hand rests gently against the rough, dark bark of the massive tree.
Lilith, wearing a dark hooded cloak, looks up at the towering branches with a curious expression.
Standing at the base of the world tree, Lilith gazes upward as its leaves rustle softly in the night air.
A single vibrant green leaf quivers on a bare branch under the starry sky. The tree reacts with a sharp, surprised exclamation as it notices her presence.
Lilith retorts that the tree was the one eavesdropping on her earlier. The tree huffs, claiming it only approached because it was genuinely concerned about her. Lilith apologizes for the interruption and turns to leave, but a branch suddenly reaches out to stop her.
The branch quivers as the tree desperately admits that it doesn't want to be left alone.
Lilith stops and asks the tree how it could have possibly known she was unwell.
The branch shakes as the tree panics, terrified she will discover the knights have been making secret wishes.
The spirit of the tree, a golden-haired figure, appears in a brief mental flicker behind the leaves.
The tree blusters, asserting that as the great world tree, it naturally knows everything.
Lilith sighs, noting that the tree is obviously dodging her question. She leans back against the trunk, acknowledging that everyone is entitled to their own secrets. Looking up at the stars, she tells the tree that its wariness of people is likely well-founded. Lilith shares a quiet moment with a single leaf as the night wind blows. She looks away, suggesting they simply drop the subject for now.
A genuine, peaceful smile forms on her face as she looks toward the horizon. Lilith explains that she prefers the solitude of the forest over the chaos of crowded places.
The tree inquires about the specific reason for her deep-seated dislike of crowds.
Closing her eyes, Lilith reflects on the fact that she has never had anyone truly by her side.
Narrative text reveals the painful truth that her own father was unable to love her.
A mental image contrasts her current self with a lonely younger Lilith standing in a distant room.
Text explains how the servants neglected her once she fell out of favor with the head of the house.
A dark silhouette depicts her tragic past, marked by a loveless marriage and a death caused by false accusations.
Lilith's blue eyes narrow with a sharp, focused intensity as she recalls her previous life.
She reflects on how little her situation has improved despite her efforts to break her engagement and flee to the academy.
Leaning against the bark, she notes that even those who seek her out, like Edrion or Aitana, have their own motives.
A close-up shows her contemplative expression as she processes her complex feelings.
The tree's branch droops as it admits that it is also very accustomed to being alone.
Lilith looks up at the tree with a sympathetic and softened gaze. She remarks that it would be nice to share a beautiful sight like this with someone else for once.
Sitting at the roots, Lilith explains that this desire for connection is exactly why she came here.
Her face is illuminated by the soft, magical light emanating from the forest.
A small branch reaches out and gently taps her on the shoulder.
Lilith turns and asks with a smile if the tree is attempting to offer her comfort.
She looks slightly taken aback as the atmosphere around the tree begins to shift. The tree finally reveals its true name as Yggdrasil and invites her to call it Yig.
Lilith gazes up at the quivering leaf, looking pleasantly surprised by the gesture.
She playfully asks the tree if this revelation means they are officially friends now.
Lilith sits in quiet contemplation at the foot of the massive trunk.
She cheekily asks her new friend to bloom for her, but the tree immediately rejects the idea.
The scene transitions to the academy grounds under the bright morning sun. Lilith walks through the lush green forest, her pink hair glowing in the daylight.
She grumbles to herself about the world tree's relentless and tyrannical demands for more rainwater.
A close-up shows her determined expression as she considers her tasks for the day.
Looking at the sky, she decides she must pressure the staff to finish the rainwater storage facility before the coming storm. Her shoes crunch on the grass as she hurries along the path.
Lilith stops suddenly when she spots the blonde-haired Edrion waiting in the distance.
Edrion gazes thoughtfully into the distance. Lilith is surprised by his presence.
Edrion stands calmly in the forest.
Edrion looks at her with intensity.
A gentle smile forms on Edrion's lips.
Lilith asks what brought him there.
Edrion asks why she is up so early and suggests she should be resting, prompting her hesitant response. Lilith explains she wanted to see Sir Geoffrey, causing Edrion to react with disappointment and ask why she mentioned that man again.
Lilith mentions having a favor to ask him, but Edrion immediately offers his own help instead. Edrion claims he is free despite Lilith noting the banquet is still in full swing.
Edrion insists again that he is free.
Lilith begins to ask her question.
Rain suddenly begins to fall.
Edrion notes the heavy downpour as Lilith looks up in surprise.
Edrion suggests they take shelter in a nearby pavilion and covers her with his cloak.
Edrion leads her toward Beschulcher.
The rain pours over the guns.
A glass-walled pavilion stands in rain. They catch their breath inside.
Edrion notes that she got wrecked.
Lilith is surprised as he reaches out.
Edrion tells her to use his cloth.
Edrion gently dries her skin. Edrion's gaze softens with growing affection. Edrion blushes deeply while Lilith matches. Lilith asks what is wrong, but Edrion dismisses it as Dockroad. Lilith worries he has a fever, causing Edrion to panic and pull back.
Lilith asks if the rain caused his condition, while Edrion thinks to himself that she looks like a sugar fairy.
Edrion tells her not to come closer because the intensity of his feelings makes the situation dangerous.
Edrion changes the subject by asking about her suggestion to use wisteria flowers instead of flaminara. Lilith is surprised by his moment. Rain continues falling on the pavilion.
Edrion explains that the minister told him she suggested the wisteria and how to source them quickly.
Lilith admits she asked the officials to keep her involvement a secret. Edrion asks why she did that, and Lilith explains her reasoning.
Lilith explains she wanted the officials to receive credit to compensate for their dismissal over the previous incident.
Edrion asks if she gave away credit to save the officials' jobs, and Lilith confirms she did.
Lilith states that since she found the problem, innocent officials shouldn't suffer, as she was only trying to save lives.
Lilith reiterates her goal was to ensure no one was unfairly kicked out.
Edrion reflects on how she prevented a war with the Duchy of Caravaldo, yet still feels guilty. Edrion notes her primary concern was protecting innocent people from being dismissed. Narrative text highlights her selfless nature. Edrion looks at her with adulation. Edrion gazes at her with tenderness. Narrative text questions her continued self-sacrifice. Edrion declares that she is truly amazing. Edrion confesses that he is falling for her all over again. Lilith is stunned by his confession.
Lilith asks if used dropping. Raindrops fall on vibrant green leaves.
Lush green leaves glisten with fresh water droplets under a clear blue sky. The world tree expresses immense satisfaction as cool water drenches its leaves. Lilith stands among several buckets, pleased that her persistence with the staff paid off. The massive tree dismissively credits the rain for the water rather than her efforts. A branch quivers as the tree suspiciously asks if Lilith is feeling unwell. Lilith looks up, explaining she is only coughing from the rain and isn't truly sick. Ignoring her own discomfort, Lilith prepares to work hard for the rest of the day. The tree suddenly and sternly commands her to stop what she is doing. Lilith is confused as the tree clumsily denies being worried about someone like her. A faint magical glow begins to emanate from the ground near the hem of her dress. A sudden flash of blue magical energy startles the pink-haired coral. A massive, intricate magic circle erupts from the grass directly beneath Lilith's feet.
Lilith is horrified and demands that the tree stop its sudden magical outburst immediately.
A blinding pillar of blue light engulfs Lilith and the base of the massive trunk. Magical energy surges violently through the architectural structures nearby as the portal stabilizes.
Lilith's form begins to vanish within the intensifying light of the teleportation spell.
She finds herself suddenly transported to a completely unfamiliar urban location. Lilith sits dazed on the ground in the middle of a deserted-looking city street. A close-up highlights her wide, shocked blue eyes as she realizes what happened. She remains speechless, staring blankly as she takes in her new surroundings.
Lilith rages against the tyrannical tree, threatening to turn it into firewood for this.
Fuming, she complains about being dumped in the middle of the capital instead of a palace. She is astounded that the tree used such unheard-of advanced portal magic on her. Lilith sighs in frustration, wondering how she will return to the palace without any resources.
She notes she looks like a commoner and lacks any money or proof of identity.
She decides to head for the main road to try and hitch a ride on a watering.
Lilith hopes that if she can reach a noble's townhouse, someone there will recognize her. Her expression goes blank and overwhelmed as she faces a new, daunting obstacle.
She stares out from the shadows of an alleyway at a massive, bustling crowd.
Lilith is completely overwhelmed by the sheer number of people gathered in the street. She stands frozen as the noise and chaos of the city square wash over her. She realizes she forgot about the spring festival, making it nearly impossible to navigate the streets. Lilith decides to retreat to the edge of the road to take refuge from the masses. Vibrant flowers bloom under the bright sun, signaling the peak of the local festivities. Townspeople celebrate joyously, dancing together in the sunlit square as the festival continues.
Slumping down in defeat, Lilith laments that her situation is now truly hopeless.
She resolves to wait on the sidelines until the dense crowd finally begins to thin out.
The celebratory mood shifts as people fearfully point out the arrival of a Clayton.
A cloaked figure with a single visible red eye draws the crowd's immediate fear and ire.
Lilith watches from the sidelines as the townspeople cruelly hurl insults at the hooded stranger.
Narrative text details the historical betrayal of the Clayton people against the Empire's first emperor.
The cloaked Clayton endures the verbal abuse in silence, keeping his head bowed low.
Narrative text explains that the Clayton people were cursed with eternal red eyes for their crimes.
Text reveals the severe level of discrimination they face despite being officially declared citizens.
A sense of heavy historical weight hangs over the grim and uncomfortable scene.
Narrative text notes that those who lost loved ones to the shadows often target Laytons for retaliation.
Lilith reflects on the fact that the vast majority of Laytons are simply innocent, ordinary citizens. A man spits on the cloaked Layton, cursing him for bringing bad luck to the festival. Lilith notices that the stranger doesn't say a single word in his own defense, despite the insults. She realizes the man might be in too poor a physical condition to even protest. Lilith sighs deeply, struggling with her reluctance to get involved in the unfolding situation.
She reflects that it feels morally wrong to ignore a sick person right before her eyes.
A voice from the sunlit town square requests a glass of water to quench a deep thirst.
Narrative text presents the formal title card of the story.
Dark blood splatters violently across a gray, textured background. A dark-haired man in a hood coughs up blood, his mouth hanging open in pain.
He gasps for air, his face pale as he struggles against his failing health. Leaning against a stone wall, the hooded stranger curses his own physical weakness.
Lilith approaches the man, her green plaid dress visible as she stops beside him.
The stranger suddenly draws a dagger and points it toward the pink-haired bro.
Lilith urgently commands the man to calm down and lower his weapon.
She insists that she didn't come there with any intention of hurting him.
A close-up reveals one of the man's eyes is a piercing, glowing red.
Lilith asks the stranger if he could please lower the knife.
The man remains silent, staring at her with a grim and intense expression.
Lilith regrets her decision to help, wishing she had simply minded her own business. Sweat beads on the stranger's pale face as he continues to struggle for breath. The man suddenly loses his strength and begins to collapse forward.
Lilith catches him as he falls, frantically asking if he is okay.
The hooded stranger slumps heavily against Lilith's shoulder. A close-up of the stranger reveals his striking and sharp facial features.
Lilith looks at him with wide, startled blue eyes.
She notes to herself that the man possesses a face anyone would consider handsome.
She wonders if the character Raven from the novel looked exactly like this man's.
Lilith questions if this man could truly be the King of Shadows and the Empire's most wanted.
She reminds herself that red eyes and pale skin are common traits among the Layton people.
Lilith stares at the man, determined to look past her own prejudices. The hooded man suddenly and firmly grabs Lilith's bed to rest.
He looms over her, his red eyes narrowed with suspicion as he speaks.
The stranger demands to know if she is capable of manipulating mana. A massive thought bubble highlights Lilith's intense fear of the man's sudden movement.
Lilith wonders how he could be perfectly fine now after appearing so sick moments ago.
She begins to suspect he might be a pervert or a clever con artist.
Lilith realizes the situation is becoming increasingly dangerous for her.
She spots a heavy garden shovel nearby and decides to take action. The man demands an answer as Lilith looks away in panic. Lilith pushes against the man's chest to create some distance between them. She reaches out and grabs the wooden handle of the shovel.
A close-up shows her hands tightening their grip on the garden tool.
Lilith swings the shovel with all her might, shouting for the perverted con artist to die. The shovel strikes the man's head with a loud metallic clanging sound. Lilith realizes she needs to flee immediately while she still has the chance. The man stands perfectly still and unfazed by the blow, surrounded by confused bear icons. Lilith is horrified and screams, wondering why he is completely unharmed by the strike.
She concludes that her situation is now hopeless and she is surely doomed.
They stand in a tense, silent standoff in the middle of the alleyway. The man surprisingly lowers his head and offers a quiet apology to her.
Lilith begins to reconsider her initial judgment, wondering if he is actually harmless.
She slowly relaxes her grip on the shovel handle.
Lilith offers her own apology for hitting him while he was already feeling unwell.
Lilith offers her water bottle to the man, explaining her intentions.
The red-eyed stranger looks down in silence.
After accepting the water, the man thanks her as Lilith continues to cough. The man reaches into his cloak to retrieve something.
He holds out a purple handkerchief for Lilith to use.
Lilith is surprised as he hands her the cloth and thanks her then. Before leaving, the man softly asks if they can meet again. They share a moment of mutual, silent surprise. Lilith stands confused as the sounds of the crowd return to the alley. She is left alone with her thoughts.
She looks toward where the mysterious man disappeared.
Lilith stands solitary in the quiet backstreet.
She clutches the purple cloth tightly against her chest.
A sudden, familiar shout from the distance startles her. Edrion appears in the square, calling out her name in a panic. He rushes to her side, frantically checking if she is injured.
Lilith reassures him she is safe and asks how he located her.
Edrion explains he tracked the mana from the portal that snatched her. Relief and worry wash over the silver-haired knight's face.
Lilith uses the stranger's cloth to cover her cough, insisting she is fine.
Edrion's gaze sharpens as he notices the unfamiliar cloth in her hand. She explains a helpful passerby gave it to her because she was coughing.
Edrion grows jealous, asking if the man was handsome, which Lilith confirms.
He correctly guesses the man's behavior, leaving Lilith stunned by his intuition.
Edrion maintains a pleasant smile while reaching for the handkerchief. He commands her to discard the stranger's cloth immediately. Insisting it is unsanitary, he swaps the cloth for his own clean one. Lilith is surprised by Edrion's sudden and intense concern for hygiene.
Edrion suggests returning to the palace and an exhausted Lilith agrees.
The pair begins their walk back to the royal bounds.
Edrion's expression turns cold as he receives a report from a subordinate.
His eyes burn with fury as he orders the mysterious man to be found.
Edrion stands alone, seething over the interaction Lilith had.
The afternoon sky remains clear over the bustling city.
Back at the palace, Lilith prepares to turn the tree into firewood.
She marches toward the world tree with her campfire kit.
Lilith pauses, noting the ground around the tree is unusually damp.
She hears a faint sniffling sound coming from the massive truck. The world tree appears to be shedding tears of mana.
Lilith asks if it is crying while the tree is shocked she thought it died.
The massive tree indignantly confirms it is very much alive.
Lilith realizes the tree is crying out of guilt for its earlier mistake.
The tree branch sags as it reveals its fear that she was lost.
Lilith stands waiting as the giant tree suddenly goes quiet.
The tree timidly asks if she is still angry with it.
Lilith smiles, forgiving the tree because it acted out of genuine concern.
She thanks the ancient being for worrying about her safety. The tree apologizes, admitting it lost control after ages of dormancy.
Lilith is amazed that such a powerful entity would offer a humble apology.
She reflects on the unexpected humility of the ancient world tree.
Lilith tries to cheer up the guilt-stricken world tree.
Lilith teases the tree for its usual brazen behavior.
Lilith clarifies she is definitely comforting her friend.
The sun sets behind the lush world tree. A dark-haired man walks through a gloomy corridor. The red-eyed Clayton assures his subordinate in his vine.
A dark atmosphere surrounds the man as he turns.
Subordinates bow as their lord takes his throne. The hooded figures formally greet the King of Shias.
A heavy silence fills the King of Shadows hall.
The King of Shadows stares forward with cold eyes. He tells his concern-filled followers his pain has stopped. A gloved hand reaches toward the dim light.
He reflects on his former confidence in his magic.
He recalls Edrion's rise as a legendary swordmaster.
He sought forbidden power to match Edrion's sword aura.
The man endures the agony of forbidden dark magic. He suffers through the brutal price of his choices. He remains steadfast in his commitment to his path.
Determination burns within the man's piercing red eyes.
He notes that Lilith's touch inexplicably cured his agony. The man contemplates the miraculous disappearance of his pain. He wonders about the identity of the pink-haired girl. He remembers Lilith's kindness despite her own poor health.
A shared moment of connection lingers in his memory.
Tired eyes blink in the dim, oppressive room.
Shadows stretch across the tall stone palace columns.
He demands a progress report on finding Edrion's weakness.
Lilith drifts into a deep sleep by the tree.
Soft light filters down on the sleeping Lilith.
A green-haired spirit watches the girl with curiosity. The mysterious boy remains silent as he watches her. He slowly reaches out toward the sleeping Lilith.
Footsteps startle the spirit, causing him to retreat.
Edrion finds Lilith resting against the massive trunk. Edrion softly asks if the sleeping girl is awake.
Lilith remains deep in her peaceful sunset slumber.
Edrion warns that she might catch a cold outside.
Lilith groggily murmurs as she begins to stir.
Edrion prepares to carry her back to safety.
The knight lifts Lilith gently into his arms. The world tree notes Edrion's surprisingly tender side. The tree recalls Edrion's former, cold and expressionless nature. The ancient tree observes Edrion's newfound genuine happiness.
Yig realizes Lilith is essential to Edrion's well-being.
The tree considers Edrion's duty to protect the grounds.
He notes the commander's inability to leave the capital. Yig imagines a happy marriage between Lilith and Edrion. The world tree decides to play matchmaker for them.
Yig joyfully offers his support as they leave.
The sun sets behind the palace dome.
Lilith is told the cheesery. Lilith questions the flashy outfit, but her maid explains it is a mandatory gift from the empress. Lilith sighs with visible exhaustion.
Lilith is startled to hear about another gift.
A note from the empress suggests using the lily of the valley dress as a doormat.
Lilith turns to inspect the dresses.
2 elegant dresses are displayed on mannequins.
Lilith compares the vivid red dress with the more modest white one.
Lilith dreads being the center of attention while her maid reminds her to stand tall. Narration highlights the importance of the banquet's final day.
Edrion knocks on the door and asks to enter.
The silver-haired knight steps into the room.
Lilith and her maid wait in the bucker.
Lilith turns to greet Others.
Edrion blushes upon seeing Lilith's appearance.
Edrion asks about the dress, and Lilith explains it was a gift from the empress. Edrion tells Lilith she looks truly beautiful.
Lilith bashfully offers her thanks.
Edrion presents a small blue jewelry box.
A delicate lily of the valley necklace shines inside.
Lilith stares at the jewelry in surprise.
Edrion explains he wanted to give her a proper gift as her fiancé.
A close-up shows the pair standing together.
Edrion offers to put the necklace on her, and Lilith accepts the gesture.
Edrion moves closer to the pink-haired girl. He prepares to fasten the jewelry. Edrion gently places the necklace around her neck. His hands adjust the delicate pearl chain.
Lilith looks down as the necklace is secured.
The floral pendant rests against her collarbone.
Lilith notes a coincidence, prompting Edrion to ask what she means.
Lilith observes that both the empress and Edrion chose Lily of the Valley themes.
A light glow surrounds the necklace.
In a memory, Edrion asks to send a gift anonymously through his sister.
His sister asks why he will not give it himself, and he admits he fears burdening Lilith.
She teases his taste while suggesting red would be more flattering.
Lilith calls out to the distracted knight.
Lilith asks him why he's smiling so much.
Edrion explains he was thinking of a happy memory. Moonlight shines over the silent palace grounds.
Floral patterns decorate a decorative transition panel.
A grand golden chandelier illuminates the ballroom. The gala is filled with dancing guests.
Edrion leads Lilith toward the grand celebration.
Edrion compliments her poise as they enter.
The couple stands atop the grand staircase.
The announcer officially heralds Lilith's arrival. Guests whisper in surprise at Lilith's presence.
The crowd gossips about her health and the status of her engagement to the Duke.
Rumors spread about Lilith being hideous.
Her appearance contrasts sharply with Edrion.
Lilith scoffs at the societal whiskers.
She tells the silent Duke she grew up hearing much worse than these rumors.
Edrion offers to escort her out and handle the remaining formalities himself.
Lilith declines, noting that such rumors are expected for a debutante in high society.
A blonde woman in a red dress approaches the couple.
The newcomer welcomes Duke Arkshad to the event. The woman wears a confident smile. Lilith realizes that she has finally arrived.
Narration introduces the woman as Chloe Lemires.
A caption explains she was Edrion's lover in the original story.
She is the influential daughter of House Myers. Lilith walks past Chloe without acknowledging it.
Narration describes Chloe as a socialite consumed by an inferiority complex toward Lilith.
Chloe reaches out, claiming Edrion's cravat is crooked.
She asks if she can fix the Duke's attire.
Edrion coldly commands the woman to move aside.
Lilith recalls how Chloe originally seduced Edrion and bullied her.
Chloe turns to Lilith, warning her that she will eventually be laughed at.
She smugly asks the pink-haired girl if she understands.
Chloe insults her, claiming she is unqualified to be the Duke's fiancé.
Edrion repeats his order to move aside, leaving Chloe visibly shaken.
Tension radiates through the silent ballroom.
Edrion explains he will not let her touch the cravat because Lilith tied it for him.
Chloe grits her teeth in suppressed rage.
The blonde woman quickly flees while stammering an apology. Lilith notes that the confrontation ended unexpectedly.
Edrion suggests finding a quieter place for them to rest together.
A distinguished blonde man with a mustache greets the couple. He addresses Duke Arkshad as the Empire's hero.
The man suggests skipping formalities to ask the swordmaster several questions. The couple remains joined at the hand.
Lilith encourages Edrion to stay and talk with the visitor. She reassures him that they can dance later after she mests.
Lilith insists she cannot keep a high-ranking noble waiting on her account.
Her elegant dress shimmers in the light. A fountain flows under the night sky.
Lilith finds relief in the garden silence. She reflects on her debut at the banquet. She notices the previous atmosphere of impending war has vanished completely.
Guests are simply enjoying the evening's festivities.
The celebration continues inside the palace.
Lilith stares toward the dark goggles. She focuses on her goals of early retirement and a comfortable life.
A sudden, harsh shout from nearby startles her. Lilith looks toward the sound of a contact.
Chloe's father berates her for failing to form a tie with the Duke.
Chloe screams that everything was fine until the pathetic fiancé reappeared.
Lilith realizes they are arguing about her while the man demands silence.
Chloe's father slaps her across the face with a heavy blow.
The blonde man sternly halts his daughter's attempt to turn away.
Lilith watches from the shadows, reflecting on the cruelty of the assault.
Chloe's father grumbles about the scene they have created in public.
He insists that the coming conflict is a fight she will win.
He warns her not to be defeated by a discarded burl.
Chloe looks down in shame while acknowledging her father's demands.
The man turns his back and walks away from his daughter.
Chloe is left standing alone in the quiet garden. Lilith decides to leave the area before she is noticed.
Lilith reflects on how no one wants witnesses to such moments.
Chloe catches sight of the pink-haired girl in the bushes. A caption asks if she looks pathetic to the observer.
Chloe addresses Lilith as Lady Noella with a piercing gaze. Lilith hopes to slip away before any further interaction occurs.
She considers the humiliation of being seen in such a state.
Chloe directly asks Lilith if she looks pathetic to her.
Lilith is caught off guard by the sudden confrontation.
Chloe accuses her of hiding so she could laugh at her.
Lilith denies it, but Chloe dismisses her words as pretense.
Chloe demands that Lilith be honest about her feelings.
She mocks Lilith for her freedom and commoner-like interests.
Chloe expresses jealousy over the things Lilith obtained without effort.
She asks if her desperate scrambling is funny to the girl. Lilith reflects on her own struggle to survive and escape misery.
Chloe asks why Lilith is looking at her with pay.
She claims her situation is better because she can produce an heir. Lilith remains silent as she processes the verbal attack.
Chloe screams at her for just standing there and listening.
Lilith observes that Chloe seems to be suffering the most. Chloe reacts with stunned silence to the unexpected remark.
Lilith offers a handkerchief to prevent a bruise on her face.
Chloe begins to sob uncontrollably before the pink-haired girl.
A detailed view shows the intricate jewelry Chloe is wearing.
Chloe asks if Lilith thinks she found a weakness.
She insists that her father's violence is a sign of love. Chloe boasts about the high cost of her dress and jewelry. She screams that she does not need Lilith's pity.
Chloe demands to know if Lilith understands her plight.
Lilith calmly confirms that she understands Chloe's feelings.
Lilith tells the blonde woman not to cry anymore.
Narration describes Chloe's extravagant outfit meant for seducing Edrion.
Text highlights the danger of drawing public resentment and ruin.
A caption notes Chloe's awareness of her status as a socialite.
Lilith reaches out to Chloe with a look of concern.
Chloe slaps Lilith's hand away with a sharp motion.
She accuses Lilith of being saintly and hypocritical.
Chloe continues to weep loudly into the handkerchief.
Lilith looks at the crying woman with a somber expression.
Lilith remembers the original girl who struggled for her father's approval. Chloe sobs and asks why Lilith is silent and if she finds her pathetic.
Lilith asks if she feels any better, leaving Chloe visibly shocked. Lilith reflects on the internal burden of suppressed anger.
Chloe argues that Lilith lived freely while she suffered in high society.
Lilith questions if the blonde woman is jealous of her academy studies.
Lilith notes that no one had ever envied her before, only mocked her.
The girls stand together under the mirror.
A view of Chloe's flowing blonde hair.
Chloe turns her head away and dismisses Lila's words.
Lilith expresses her wish for Chloe to live for herself.
Lilith notes that life is too short for someone else's wishes. Chloe stares ahead in stunned silence.
Lilith looks down, worrying she may have overstopped.
Chloe screams in frustration while the pink-haired girl flinches. Chloe declares her departure, leaving Lilith to regret her outspokenness.
The quiet garden remains perfectly still.
Chloe invites Lilith to follow her inside before quickly retracting the offer. Lilith considers the blonde woman to be unexpectedly endearing. Chloe warns that being seen with her will damage Lilith's reputation. Chloe looks back and calls Lilith a strange person.
The blonde woman huffs and marches away.
A silent wish for a safe return all.
Ornate chandeliers illuminate the grand ballroom.
Lilith wonders about Edrion's current wear apps.
Lilith wonders why the Duke's meeting is taken to law.
A man introduces himself as Lloyd of House Valanche.
Lloyd asks for a dance, causing Lilith to hesitate.
A group of nobles suddenly surrounds the girl. Multiple voices clamor to dance with the new debutante.
Lilith looks completely overwhelmed by the sudden attention. You are having a conversation with the user. The user will provide a text and ask you to read it back with a faster speed. Your only task is to read the text back to the user without any acknowledgement and nothing else. Just read the text.
The gentlemen continue to press in on the brawl.
Chaos erupts as various nobles argue over the request.
Lilith looks on in horror at the scene. Nobles scheme to exploit Lilith's social and financial status.
A thought bubble evaluates Lilith's worth as a podner.
Lilith stares ahead with wide, panicked eyes. Lloyd reaches out toward the frozen girl.
Lilith looks away, wishing for an escape.
Edrion suddenly appears and calls out to his fiancée.
The silver-haired knight offers a warm, reassuring smile.
Edrion coldly greets Marquis Valanche upon his return. Lloyd reacts with immediate terror at the Duke's arrival.
Edrion looms over the nobleman with an intimidating presence.
Edrion invites Lilith to dance while she remains confused.
The Duke acts oblivious to the earlier tension.
A glowing chandelier hangs from above. Edrion takes Lilith's hand and leads her away.
Lilith is startled by the sudden physical contact.
Edrion tells Lilith to move closer to him.
Edrion's hand guides Lilith during their dance.
Lilith leans into Edrion as they dance.
Lilith blushes while looking up at Edrion.
Edrion gazes down at Lilith with a smile. Lilith is startled by their sudden closeness.
She reflects on being so close to Edrion. The couple continues their graceful ballroom dance.
Lilith accidentally steps on Edrion's gut.
Edrion asks if Lilith enjoys the dance.
Lilith confesses she lacks any physical talent.
She focuses on not crushing his feet.
Lilith admits she avoided Academy social events.
Lilith trips and lets out eye. Edrion lifts Lilith high into the air.
Lilith looks down at the silver-haired Duke.
Edrion's strong hand supports her during the lift.
Lilith's foot touches the floor one floor.
Edrion asks if her high heels hurt.
Lilith insists she is feeling perfectly fine.
Edrion compares her weight to Esthether.
A close view of Edrion's silver hair.
Edrion tells her not to be nervous.
Lilith stares at him with wide eyes.
She rests her head against his chest.
Lilith feels unable to look at him.
She senses an intense gaze from afar. The Emperor and Prime Minister observe Lilith.
Details of the Emperor's royal red kick.
A sinister shadow falls over the Emperor.
Lilith wonders why the Emperor is staring.
A caption introduces Emperor Kairos of Celeria. Kairos is known for collecting national tar. His nickname is the Overworked Deathmaker. Lilith notices the elderly man standing nearby.
The Prime Minister's many resignations were rejected.
Lilith worries why their gazes are fixed.
The Emperor prepares to address the girl. Lilith fears being forced into national service. Edrion notices Lilith's sudden change of mimp. Lilith points out a fake top-dancing prince.
Edrion is confused by her sudden claim.
Edrion stands alone after Lilith suddenly frees.
Lilith runs quickly through the palace hallways.
She stops to catch her breath alone. Lilith wanders into a quiet palace corridor. She decides to apologize to Edrion later. The grand hall is empty and silent.
Lilith sighs with relief after her escape.
A voice suddenly questions her solitary presence.
A tall bearded man confronts the girl.
Lilith is stunned to find her father standing before her in the hallway. The tall, bearded man demands to know what she is doing in such a place.
Lilith stares up at him, her silent thoughts confirming his identity as her father.
She reflects on how long it has been since she last had to face him.
Her mind drifts back to the day she signed her annulment papers in his presence. The Duke notes her time in the capital and questions why she hasn't returned to the family. Lilith observes that he focuses entirely on business without asking how she has been. She realizes she no longer feels the need to pretend to care about him either. Her father sternly orders her to end her fun and come back to the family immediately. Lilith looks up at the man with a gaze full of confusion and hidden pain. He warns that a direct descendant of Noella should not be wandering about and causing rumors.
Lilith feels a pang of disappointment, realizing she briefly hoped he might actually be worried.
She recognizes that her father's only true concern is the preservation of the family's reputation. A surge of internal frustration causes her to grip the fabric of her dress tightly.
Lilith confronts him, asking why he hid the fact that her annulment with Edrion was cancelled.
The man coldly retorts that he didn't hide anything. She simply never asked him about it. He dismisses the idea that he has any obligation to inform her about her own marriage. Lilith is left reeling from his total lack of regard for her life and future. She realizes with heavy heart that he simply cannot be bothered to care about her. Lilith wonders why she even expected anything different from a man like her father. She decides to stop hoping for his affection just as a familiar voice calls her name.
Edrion arrives on the scene, causing the Duke to turn and face the silver-haired knight.
The young Duke looks toward the pair with a serious and protective expression. Lilith is visibly shaken by the sudden confrontation between the two powerful men. Edrion offers a formal greeting while the gray-haired man acknowledges his presence with a stony look.
An oppressive tension fills the air as the two noblemen lock eyes.
Edrion places a steadying hand on Lilith's shoulder to offer her immediate comfort.
He firmly announces that Lilith is feeling unwell and needs to leave the conversation.
The knight leads the pink-haired girl away while she follows him with a look of relief. The Duke remains behind in silence, watching the two walk away from him. A subtle, unreadable expression crosses the man's face as he stands alone in the corridor. He watches from a distance as Edrion continues to protectively guide his daughter. The man reflects on how much his daughter resembles someone from his past. A memory of a beautiful woman with long, flowing pink hair enters his mind. He recalls a woman's claim that Lilith would grow up to look and act just like her. A younger version of the Duke is shown weeping over his inability to keep a promise. He acknowledges that Lilith shares her mother's striking appearance and her fierce boldness. The scene shifts back to Lilith's face as she remains haunted by the annulment secret. The Duke looks down with a somber expression, seemingly burdened by his own choices.
Edrion keeps his gaze fixed ahead as he escorts Lilith toward Sage.
The knight's golden eyes glow with a fierce and unwavering determination.
Lilith's father stands alone in the shadows, his posture suggesting a deep internal conflict. He tries to reassure himself that the path he chose for his family was the right one.
A servant wearing a monocle approaches the Duke to deliver a message. The attendant reports that they have finally confirmed the whereabouts of young Master Bear.
The Duke's expression shifts to one of curiosity at the mention of his son.
He imagines his son training wildly with a bear and despairs over how different his children are, while at least one of them knows how to give a proper bear hug. The Duke gives a stern order for the servant to go and bring the young man back.
The servant bows respectfully and prepares to carry out the Duke's command.
Lilith and Edrion continue their walk, their hands tightly clasped as they leave the Duke behind.
Lilith remains lost in her thoughts. She reflects on her father's coldness. He prioritized family status over her. She wonders why he never cared. Lilith startles after bumping into Edrion. Edrion asks if she's all right. He invites her to go inside. Lilith gazes up at the architecture. A familiar crest catches her eye.
She realizes they are at his house.
Edrion apologizes for the sudden visit. He gazes at her with kindness. Lilith looks shocked by the situation. Rows of maids bow in greeting. The butler welcomes the unready. Lilith is overwhelmed by the reception. The grand mansion shines at night. She regrets ending up here now. Servants treat her like the mistress.
Lilith considers their current engaged status.
She questions her own personal capabilities. A magnificent green bedroom is revealed.
Edrion presents the room with excitement.
They enter the beautifully decorated chamber. Lilith is stunned the room exists.
She worries about her future departure.
Lilith stands alone in the room. She notices something curious about her. A suspicious door sits in view. Her hand reaches for the handle. She opens the door with caution. Edrion reveals the adjoining bedroom is his. He mentions his plans for their marriage. The lush bedding glows and bright. Edrion welcomes her to her home. Lilith stares at him in disbelief.
This room belongs to the future Duchess.
Lilith clutches her dress in shock. Edrion offers a very gentle smile. Lilith looks away to hide her hands. Her face is colored with embarrassment. He asks to explore another area. A butler arrives with urgent news. He whispers a message into Edrion's ear. Edrion's golden eyes turn cold and shock.
He apologizes for his brief departure.
Lilith wonders if something is wrong.
He mentions a pest in the mansion.
He suggests she stay for the night.
The night walks away into darkness.
Edrion walks through a dim corner.
He reaches the prisoner's dark cell.
A hazy atmosphere fills the area.
Edrion coldly commands his guards to wake the prisoner.
The spring banquet ends on scaffold.
Trade disputes are resolved very successfully.
Lilith returns to her daily routine.
She describes herself as the tree's doormat.
Lilith carries various gardening tools outside.
The tree demands much higher effort. The voice insists on calling Edrion.
Lilith is surprised by the tree.
Lilith tries to fetch an otter.
Edrion arrives with a radiant smile.
Edrion offers his help whenever she needs it.
Edrion asks for the current task.
Lilith explains the urgency of bark removal.
He promises to handle the height.
A rustle comes from the leads.
Lilith's foot slips off her stool.
She stumbles toward the young duke.
Edrion catches her in his arms.
Lilith stares at him in shock.
The sentient branch enjoys the view.
Edrion checks achieve her.
The branch cheers for the couple.
Lilith kicks the trunk in amber. She accuses the tree of tripping her.
Edrion works high up in the tree.
The knight focuses on his task.
Lilith is mesmerized by his beauty.
The tree asks about her marriage. Lilith rejects the scary idea of marriage.
The tree branch begs her to stay.
She suspects mana causes the behavior.
Lilith ponders the tree's unusual state.
Shadows threaten to rot the roots.
History repeats if mana stays contaminated.
Darkness spreads across the entire land.
Leaders worry over a withered quet.
Emperor Kairos looks visibly drained.
Production credits appear for the secrecy.
The men examine the sickly rig. Kairos questions the empire-wide crop failures.
The official admits they lack a cause. The emperor's blue eyes narrow intensely.
The mandragora root looks completely dead. Reports indicate southern crops are flourishes.
Kairos questions the south's unique success. The official explains their improved variety.
Emperor Kairos orders the southern lords arrival.
Lilith studies late in the palace library. Lilith sighs over her difficult arcanic studies. Lilith struggles to understand the nature of mana. She wishes for an expert to consult directly.
Lilith ponders her lack of arcanic expertise. Lilith remembers Renok's intense academic energy.
Lilith decides to consult Sir Renok immediately. The morning sky shines a bright blue.
Lilith arrives at the Imperial Administrative Hall.
She enters the Empire's busy bureaucratic hurt. The hall hums with forced, endless productivity.
Lilith observes the workers' extreme physical exhaustion.
Workers boast about their dangerous sleep deprivation. Lilith hurries toward the Magic Tower department.
Renok recognizes Lilith in the crowded corridor.
Lilith asks Renok about the World Chair.
Renok is currently rushing to a meeting. Renok explains the Emperor's recent mobilization orders.
Renok requests a moment of Lilith's time.
Lilith attempts a hasty and polite retreat.
She fears being exploited for national labor. Peepee suddenly emerges from Lilith's pink hair.
Renok notices movement behind the ghost head.
Lilith realizes Peepee has followed her undetected. Renok identifies the creature as a mandragora.
Lilith explains her improved quiet mandragora variety.
Renok is fascinated by the botanical development.
Renok cries over Lilith's incredible botanical brilliance.
Lilith is bewildered by his intense reaction.
Renok explains the Empire's mandragora yield crisis. Lilith links the crisis to the Kug. Renok leads Lilith into a private workspace.
Peepee chirps happily from Lilith's shoulder.
Two bureaucrats are shocked by the plant.
Lilith discovers her own thesis on mandragoras.
Lilith is shocked to see you here.
Senefer introduces himself as a fellow scholar.
The man reveals his secret mandragora obsession.
Another fanboy official expresses his deep admiration.
Renok admits using Lilith's research as reference.
Lilith feels pressure to offer her help. She finds an opportunity for subtle manipulation. Lilith plans to leak the plague's truth.
She intends for bureaucrats to investigate Elan. Lilith imagines bureaucrats doing all the work.
Lilith agrees to help the mandragora investigation. Renok proposes an official advisor position. Lilith frantically rejects the official appointment offer. Lilith smiles while fearing a death by overwork. Lilith envisions her distant future as a 90-year-old retiree living peacefully in the South.
She imagines the Prime Minister still working at age 180 and vows not to be ground up as fertilizer for the nation.
Lilith frantically declines the help, her hands waving as she says she would feel too bad just receiving it.
A man's boots stand firmly on the polished floor as he says, "Understood."
A tall man with brown hair stands behind a door and suggests they first share their side's materials.
Lilith turns her head to look at the noble standing right next to her. Her blue eyes widen in shock as she lets out a silent gasp. The man repeats, "Understood," as he looms over the smaller girl.
He continues his plan to share their side's research materials while Lilith looks on.
The man asks Lilith if she is a doctor.
Lilith is surprised and asks if he is Viscount Chelsea while Peepee chirps from her hand.
The noble is delighted to see a talking plant.
Viscount Chelsea asks if she is investigating the situation, and officials confirm it is the doctor.
Lilith asks what brings him here, but admits she has a bad feeling about this.
He explains that the excellent quality mandragoras grown in his territory led to his summons for the investigation.
The Lord of the South happily reveals he told everyone the success was thanks to the doctor's improved variety.
Narration mentions her thesis topic was about green mandragoras improved to have strong resistance to contaminated mana.
Renock mentions the Viscount succeeded in cultivating the variety thanks to her and wants to express his gratitude.
2 palace officials escort Lilith away, telling her someone really wants to meet her. A lonely voice cries out from the void, begging her to play. The scene shifts to the Imperial throne room where Emperor Kairos sits with a high official.
The Emperor notes that from what he has heard, the lady is quite talented.
Lilith bows deeply and claims that being talented is impossible.
The Emperor calls her modest and wants to entrust her with a task while Lilith thinks, "I don't want to," repeatedly. An attendant presents a tray and says the detailed conditions are written there for her to read. The decree officially appoints Lyris Lanuela as an advisor to the investigation team to cooperate in phenomena investigations.
Lilith stares at the paper in absolute horror.
The Emperor offers a wide smile and says he never rejects outstanding talent.
She tries to protest with a stuttered, "However."
He licks his lip and informs her that the performance bonus is separate.
Lilith realizes she can never leave the celestial road now that a shadow of a chain binds her to the throne.
The Emperor tells her to sign the document if she has read everything.
Comical tears stream down Lilith's face as she loses her hope for a quiet life.
She signs the document while a world lifespan factoid floats in the background.
Emperor Kairos leans in close and exclaims at the sight of the talking plant.
Lilith is forced to study late at night in the library alongside Renock and other scholars.
She works diligently, poring over a large open book on a table.
The scene shifts to a meeting table where Lilith sits with a group of Imperial officials. Lush green leaves shimmer in the bright daylight.
Lilith takes a deep breath of fresh air as she stands outside in the garden.
She walks slowly across a wide green lawn under a clear blue sky.
She laments that the moment she signed the document, she became unable to leave the capital.
Sunlight filters through the dense green leaves of a grand tree.
A green-haired boy with a braid sits on a branch and chirps a greeter.
Lilith realizes she was so focused on the mandragora problem that she didn't even ask about the world tree.
The boy with the golden eyes stares down at her.
She laments her extremely busy schedule.
Lilith calls up to the boy, saying she should tell Yig that she won't be able to come for a while.
She looks at the boy on the branch and wonders if he will sulk again.
The boy watches her silently with a wide golden eye.
The green-haired boy leaps down from the tree as Lilith watches.
Lilith is bewildered by his sudden appearance right in front of her. Her eyes widen as she recognizes the boy's voice.
A startled exclamation of "YGG" fills the air. The boy with a long green braid stands calmly holding Pee-Pee. He reveals he has been able to take this form for some time. He explains that her care has made him healthy enough to manifest.
Lilith remembers how much of a bossy supervisor he was in tree form.
The boy watches Pee-Pee fly through the air Mythmender.
He stands barefoot on the lush green grass. Lilith asks if he feels cold in his human state. She decides to wrap her heavy cloak around the small boy.
The plaid fabric settles over his shoulders to keep him warm. He stands on the edge of the cloak, looking down at the seat. Lilith notices something unusual about his presence and questions it. The boy smiles, noting that she hasn't changed at all. He lists the restrictions of his form, including his inability to touch things.
He explains that to most mages, he appears only as a lump of mana.
A swirling, bright core of mana represents his true essence.
Lilith reaches out and gently cups his face in her hands.
The boy freezes in shock as her fingers make contact with his skin. His golden eyes widen as he realizes she can actually touch him. He remarks on the surprising warmth of her body heat.
They share a quiet moment as the sun begins to set.
His bare feet remain rooted to the soft garden ground.
Lilith looks down at him with a tender, thoughtful expression.
Her mood shifts as she prepares a more physical greeting.
She grabs his cheeks and begins to pull them apart.
Lilith stretches his face while shouting his name in playful frustration. The boy runs away laughing while Lilith chases him around the trade. The two sit side by side against the massive trunk as dusk falls.
Lilith mentions she will be busy with a task from the Emperor soon.
The boy warns that Kairos never lets go of the talent he finds.
Lilith sulks at the thought of being stuck with a government job. She stands up and brushes herself off, preparing to leave.
The boy looks up, disappointed that she has to go so soon.
She laments the mountain of work waiting for her the next day.
He takes a step forward into the darkening grass.
He reaches an invisible barrier and cannot follow her any further. Lilith turns back, confused by why he stops so abruptly.
The boy stands alone, trapped near the base of the walled tree.
He waves his hand and a magical spark ignites in the air. A trail of energy crackles as he uses his powers to signal her.
He tells her goodbye and suggests they meet again very soon.
Lilith smiles and tells him to sleep well as she departs.
She walks away, leaving him a small figure beneath the giant tree. Her silhouette fades as she heads back toward the pause.
Lilith looks over her shoulder, her expression full of concern.
The boy remains standing perfectly still in the growing shadows.
She feels a pang of guilt about leaving him all by himself. A quiet transition amidst silhouetted leaves.
Night falls over the Imperial palace grounds.
Aitana furiously demands why Kairos turned Lilith into a bureaucrat.
Kairos insists Lilith is only a temporary official with specific talents. Aitana questions if she truly understands Kairos' schemes.
Aitana claims Kairos never releases talent, thwarting her own plans for Lilith.
Kairos reassures Aitana that he intends to release her sin.
Kairos questions if Lilith might have actually wanted the position herself.
Kairos pompously declares that all devoted scholars yearn for public service.
Kairos envisions Lilith as his future prime minister while she suffers.
Lilith wakes in the night with a sudden, chilling premonition.
Aitana firmly tells Kairos that his assessment of Lilith is incorrect. Aitana confidently asserts that Lilith desires to be her own companion.
Lilith recoils in horror while the nobles debate her future social standing.
Lilith tries to blame the room's energy for her growing unease.
Kairos challenges Aitana to a wager regarding the girl's eventual choice.
They agree to let Lilith choose between statehood and high society fang.
A sinister smile creeps across Aitana's face. Morning light floods through the grand windows of the palace. Lilith begins her day exhausted after a night of bad omens.
An official arrives to greet Lilith with a massive stack of paperwork.
Lilith begs for the paperwork to be a mistake, but he declines. A cart overflowing with documents reveals the true scale of her workload.
Lilith stands frozen in a state of pure soul-crushing despair.
The scene shifts to the bustling crowds of a sunny market. Lilith escapes the palace under the guise of urgent field research. She decides she would rather hide knowledge than read endless reports.
Lilith weeps over the sheer amount of research still required.
She wonders why the local conditions have deteriorated so drastically. A buyer accuses a merchant of selling old mandragoras as fresh stock.
Shriveled mandragora scream in agony, confirming the reports Lilith had read.
Lilith laments the lack of healthy mandragoras even during the harvest season. She sits dejectedly in an alley, finding no new clues. Lilith realizes the crisis is far worse than the official reports suggested. She puzzles over how to leak the mana contamination truth safely. She fears a repeat of her tragic fate from the original story.
A tall, cloaked man suddenly appears and notes her unwell appearance.
Lilith's blue eyes widened in shock as she recognizes the man's voice.
The mysterious knight looms over her before sitting at her side. Lilith is baffled by how he appeared so suddenly without warming.
Stunned, she can only stare up at the cloaked man.
He settles onto a wooden crate right beside the girl.
She continues to reel from his impossibly fast and silent arrival.
The cloaked man expresses concern and asks if she is feeling ill.
Lilith manages to reply that she was simply deep in thought.
She reflects on the unexpected nature of their reunion in the city.
A sharp metallic scent coming from him catches her immediate attention.
Lilith urgently grabs his cloak as he tries to move away.
She pulls the fabric aside to reveal fresh blood staining his clothes.
A soft voice asks if he is truly all right.
The black-haired man sits silently, his shoulder and arm heavily stained with fresh blood.
Lilith cries out in shock at the amount of blood she sees while the man insists he is fine.
Lilith refuses to believe him and urgently questions why he is not going to see a doctor.
Lilith suddenly pauses as a realization strikes her.
She remembers that a lightened commoner would struggle to find a proper doctor in a society that despises them.
Lilith stares at his injury, wondering if he was caught in a mine explosion or a similar terrible accident.
Lilith tells the man to wait as she reaches for her large travel bag.
Lilith is relieved she has first aid supplies just as Pee-Pee suddenly leaps out of her bag.
Lilith shouts Pee-Pee's name in alarm as the mandragora makes a surprise appearance. The black-haired man looks on with a blank expression as the creature lands on Lilith's shoulder. The man calmly identifies the creature as a mandragora.
Lilith explains that companion mandragoras have become quite popular lately.
The man stares intensely at the small creature perched on the pink-haired girl.
Lilith tells him to bear with the pain as she begins carefully wrapping his torso in bandages.
Lilith works diligently with a knife and cloth to dress his wounds. Lilith notices that the man shows no sign of pain despite the severity of the injury. Lilith finishes the bandaging as they sit together in the quiet alleyway.
She holds out the remaining medicine and bandages for him to keep.
She explains this is only basic first aid and urges him to seek proper treatment as soon as possible.
Lilith gives him detailed instructions on how to clean his hands and disinfect the wound later.
Lilith is startled when the man suddenly speeds up.
The man looks at her and asks if she is finally done thinking.
Lilith can only offer a stunned exclamation as she is caught off guard.
She looks away and admits that she is actually still processing her thoughts.
Lilith explains that she is in a difficult situation and has no one to turn to for advice.
She bows her head, sorrowfully repeating that she has no one to help her.
The man listens as she talks about her hopes for adulthood.
Lilith looks down, mentioning her vague dream of finally living the life she wanted.
She clenches her dress tightly, lamenting that she still feels like she is nothing. She catches herself, thinking there is no reason to dump her problems on a complete stranger. The black-haired man tells her that he once felt the exact same way. He looks up and describes a heavy task he was forced to shoulder without a choice. Lilith listens intently as the man shares his burden. The man stares off into the distance, his expression grim.
A thought reflects the weight of a task that will never end until he dies.
The man's red eye sharpens as he explains he decided to take matters into his own hands. He states that if he cannot run away, he would rather finish the task to be free of fate's constraints.
Lilith looks up at him with wide, curious eyes.
She wonders what kind of immense task he could be trying to accomplish. Lilith watches him, hoping that he will be able to find peace once everything is over.
The man is taken aback by her gentle reaction.
Lilith offers him a soft, warm smile that brightens her face. Perplexed, the man asks her if she is not afraid of him. Lilith looks down and begins to speak her mind.
She tells him that his black hair is wonderful, comparing it to the night sky when stars rise.
She gazes at him and says his red eyes look like a vivid, beautiful star in the autumn night.
Lilith looks up at the sunset sky and asks if he has ever seen the fire star. She tells him there is not much of autumn left and urges him to see it this year.
As night falls, the black-haired man stands alone on a roof overlooking the city.
A cloaked subordinate kneels before the man and addresses him as my lord.
Two cloaked figures stand atop a roof at night, reporting they have found the mana vein.
A glowing red magic circle illuminates the ground as they confirm finding the capital's mana vein.
The black-haired man declares this will be the final land they contaminate.
Looking toward the sky, they dedicate their actions to the clan and their desire for revenge.
A small, mysterious bottle hangs from a belt, rattling with a soft sound.
A gloved hand holds the dark vial against a backdrop of intricate magical patterns.
Lilith gazes softly ahead, her pink hair shimmering in the light.
A transition of abstract shapes and lines on a dark gradient background.
The black-haired man clenches his fist with a grim, determined expression.
Dark energy rises over the palace grounds for the sake of their grand undertaking. Red sparks of contamination begin to spread across the aerial view of the city.
Lilith works diligently at her desk late into the night.
She focuses intently on her writing, the quill moving across the parchment.
The black-haired man remains in the shadows, his face partially obscured.
Lilith looks up with a start, her blue eyes wide with realization. Papers flutter against a playful pink background adorned with bunny illustrations.
Lilith reviews a letter she has received while seated in her private chambers.
She shifts from exhaustion to sudden excitement upon discovering a specific envelope joined by cheering subordinates.
Lilith continues her secret correspondence, noting that writing with her left hand causes cramps.
A loud commotion outside her door interrupts her quiet night of work.
Jeffrey frantically follows Edrion down the hall, pleading with him to receive proper medical treatment.
Lilith peeks out from her room, curious about the noise in the corridor.
She steps into the hallway and asks about the cause of the disturbance. Edrion stops and turns back toward Lilith as Jeffrey continues to call out in distress.
Jeffrey begs Lilith to talk sense into their lord while Edrion commands his subordinate to be quiet.
Edrion apologizes for the late-night interruption and promises to send the others away.
Lilith stands her ground and insists that he must receive medical attention.
Iron arrives and suggests that Edrion was injured while protecting the group.
Edrion dismisses the claim as nonsense, looking visibly bothered by the attention.
Lilith is taken aback by the mention of the name Iron.
Iron argues that even a sword master cannot heal black mana alone, but Edrion refuses to hear more.
Aaron remains firm, stating he absolutely cannot back down this time. Edrion's golden eyes narrow with a sharp, piercing glare.
Lilith watches the two men argue, feeling a sense of growing concern.
She reaches out a hand to intervene in the tense situation.
Lilith places her hand firmly on Edrion's chest, catching him completely by surprise.
Edrion flushes bright red and stammers her name in shock.
Lilith notes that while he has no visible wounds, his uniform is perfectly pristine.
She keeps her hand pressed against him, searching for signs of the hidden injury.
She concludes that if he is insisting this strongly on needing treatment, there must be a reason.
Lilith turns her attention to the blonde knight standing near back.
She orders Jeffrey to request the Imperial physician from the Empress, and he leaves immediately.
Edrion tries to reassure her that he is fine and that such things are common for him.
Lilith ignores his protests and sternly commands him to go inside the room.
Inside the chamber, the physician arrives and asks Edrion to remove his clothes for an exam.
Edrion begins to unbutton his shirt, his expression resigned but embarrassed.
Lilith reacts with sudden bashfulness as she realizes the situation.
She quickly announces she is stepping outside while Edrion stands shirtless in the background. The door shuts firmly as Lilith makes her hasty exit.
Edrion pulls his shirt aside, revealing a jagged, dark wound pulsing with black energy on his side.
The green-haired man bows politely.
He introduces himself as Iron Levalenge.
Lilith is surprised to confirm his identity.
Lilith recalls Iron as Edrion's Lefract. Lilith asks if there is a problem.
Iron discusses the Lord's peerless strength.
Iron recounts falling into a deadly trap.
Iron explains the clashing mana texts. They stand together in the ornate hallway.
Iron defends his decision to share secrets.
Lilith questions why he is calling her.
Iron pledges his life to the captain. Iron says she deserves to know.
Edrion announces his treatment has finished.
The pair turns to face the Lord.
Edrion asks about their private conversation. Lilith explains their concern for him.
Edrion admits embarrassment at his perceived weakness.
Lilith urges him to prioritize self-care.
His golden eyes soften with emotion. Lilith names those worried about him.
Edrion offers a quiet, sincere apology.
Iron watches the two for mind.
Lilith notes Iron's apparent deep sincerity.
Lilith dreads Iron's eventual betrayal.
A digital advertisement for scanlation services.
Mages work diligently in the royal library.
A mysterious letter rests on the desk.
Lilith discovers an anonymous alarming report. The mages examine the document's contents.
Lilith decides to investigate the matter.
Lilith takes notes on the situation.
An elder praises the new generation's insight. Lilith reacts to the quick verification.
They discuss the mana contamination theory.
Renock asks Lilith for her professional tops.
Renock challenges the feasibility of the hypothesis.
Lilith confirms the gravity of the claim.
Renock questions her understanding of mana.
Renock defines mana and its natural fall.
Renock explains the fatal cost of contamination.
He uses analogies to illustrate power limits.
He deems the task impossible for Magus.
Lilith understands why the truth remained hidden.
Lilith realizes Raven's skill is peerless. The weight of the secret lingers.
Raven's power dwarfs the Empire's Midas. The Elder continues as the door opens. The Emperor arrives at the meeting.
They bow respectfully to the Emperor.
The Emperor reviews the submitted report while the elderly mage bows respectfully at his side. He smiles with satisfaction while holding the document in his hands.
Lilith is stunned that the report she submitted only an hour ago is already with the Emperor.
Sunlight streams through the grand, arched windows of the palace.
Seated at the head of the long table, the Emperor acknowledges the opinions of Lilith and the Magic Tower.
He notes that the current crisis cannot be solved simply by staying behind a desk.
The Emperor asks Lilith to join the investigation team, causing her to freeze in shock. He beams with a wide smile, expressing how fortunate it is to have someone with her talent.
A lone figure walks down the long, ornate palace hallway past large windows.
Lilith clenches her notes, desperately trying to think of a way to refuse the dangerous assignment.
She worries about her health and the responsibility of looking after her companions, Peepee and Ig.
A voice calling her name causes Lilith to flinch in surprise. The chief lady-in-waiting approaches, noting that she has finally found Lilith. Lilith breaks into a cold sweat as she faces the high-ranking attendant. Without a word, Lilith suddenly spins around and bolts in the opposite direction. She sprints away at high speed, determined to escape the interaction. The lady-in-waiting chases after her, calling for her to stop. Both women eventually come to a halt, bent over and panting heavily from the pursuit. The lady assumes Lilith didn't hear her due to the urgency of her work. She takes a moment to clear her throat and regain her poise. She beams and describes the meeting as an immense honor.
Lilith is filled with dread, realizing the alternative to the assignment is entering high society.
To her, the social battlefield of the nobility is far scarier than manual labor.
Lilith quickly claims she is going on an extended assignment starting tomorrow. The lady-in-waiting is surprised that Lilith has already accepted the Emperor's proposal.
Lilith enthusiastically lies, saying she has wanted to do this for a long time.
In the background, the elderly mage is visibly moved by her apparent dedication.
Renock and the Elder applaud her passion, calling her a natural-born bureaucrat.
Renock is moved to tears and vows to follow her hard-working example. Lilith stares blankly as her plan to avoid work results in more work.
Bright sunlight filters through the lush green canopy of a massive tree.
Yig, the green-haired boy, sits dejectedly at the base of the ancient tree.
Lilith rushes toward him, shouting that she is doomed, startling him.
Yig stands up and asks her to explain how she is doomed. Lilith wails dramatically about her self-inflicted predicament. Yig looks on with a completely bewildered and confused expression.
He asks if this means she will be gone for a long time.
Yig sits back down and sulks with a quiet hum. Lilith gazes at him with wide, concerned eyes.
She promises to ensure everyone takes care of him while she is away.
Yig looks away with a somber, lonely expression. Lilith gently places her hand on the boy's head to comfort him. She giggles and calls him a baby, but he quickly protests the claim. He pouts and insists that he simply does not feel well. Lilith asks if he is telling the truth about his condition. Yig admits that something about the area feels strange and off.
Lilith turns her attention to the surroundings, sensing something might be wrong.
She examines the tree's leaves, wondering if the problem is mana-related.
Lilith decides to find Sir Renock to help her investigate the mana issue.
She looks back at Yig one last time before heading off. Yig pleads with Lilith, expressing his fear of being left alone. Lilith looks at the boy with wide, shocked eyes. Yig leans his head sadly against Lilith as she sits. Lilith worries about leaving the boy behind during her assignment.
Yig reacts with surprise as Lilith calls out to him.
Lilith offers a gentle and warm smile to comfort him. She tenderly pats Yig's green hair as he rests nearby.
Lilith asks if he feels better, and he tentatively agrees.
A close-up shows her hands soothingly stroking his hair.
Lilith contemplates whether to reveal the truth about the mana.
She worries about burdening him before her upcoming departure. Lilith decides to explain the truth about his current condition.
Yig reacts with shock to the hypothesis of mana contamination.
Yig realizes that the mission is directly related to him. The pair sits together in a momentarily gloomy, heavy atmosphere.
Lilith asks if he can survive without absorbing any mana.
Yig explains that absorbing mana is as necessary as breathing.
Lilith asks if there is an alternative method for him.
She suggests finding a way to bypass the underground pans.
Yig hesitates, looking away with a conflicted and quiet expression.
Lilies eagerly presses him to reveal if a solution exists.
Yig suddenly proposes that the two of them make a contract.
Lilith is taken aback by the boy's sudden and random request.
Yig explains the contract involves a mutual exchange of power.
Lilith flatly rejects the idea with a look of distaste. Yig protests, arguing she could use the World Tree's power.
Lilith refuses to be dragged into any more dangerous situations.
Yig warns her that things could go wrong during investigations. Lilith counters that the only danger in dirt is an earthworm. Well, that is one way to keep the stakes low. The two yell at each other about potential ominous tragedies. Lilith ignores him and walks away while he clings to her.
Yug boasts about how everyone else is grateful for his daughter.
The boy asks Lilith if she truly dislikes him that much.
Yig uses Edrion's nickname for Lilith to get her attention.
Lilith suspects the boy is trying to charm his way through.
Yig stares up with large, pleading, and glistening yellow eyes. Lilith reacts with an expression of pure, soul-crushing exhaustion. Lilith stands up, suddenly startled by someone's unexpected arrival nearby.
Yig excitedly if they can finally make the contract.
Lilith asks if his power happens to include blooming flowers.
The two stand together under the bright sky and tree.
Lilith stretches her arms after finishing her difficult packing tasks.
She finds a large pile of luggage waiting at the door.
Edrion surprises Lilith by appearing at the palace staircase.
Edrion announces his intention to join the investigation team tomorrow. Lilith is shocked that he is traveling while still recovering.
She rants about earthworms being the only real investigative danger.
Edrion reacts to her bizarre claim with stunned, wide eyes.
Edrion solemnly vows to protect Lilith from every single earthworm.
Lilith pouts, looking unimpressed by his overly dramatic protection vow.
The red-haired woman shouts that a woman's heart inevitably opens to a strong man who shows her his vulnerable side.
As Edrion hides his face in his hands from embarrassment, his sister holds up a plush doll resembling a small bear.
During their tea, the red-haired woman tells Edrion to solve his own romantic woes and prepare for his upcoming wedding. The woman smirks while planning to appoint Lilith as her chief lady-in-waiting once the marriage is finalized. She expresses hope that her dense brother will manage to perform his duties correctly during the mission.
A horse-drawn carriage travels along a dirt path through a sun-drenched forest.
Lilith wakes up with a gasp inside the carriage, feeling a sudden and ominous chill.
Edrion smiles warmly at his fiancée, noting that she has finally woken up from her nap.
The pink-haired girl looks around the interior of the carriage as she regains her bearings.
Edrion announces their arrival as Lilith gazes out at the towering trees of the dense woodland.
Lilith is struck with a sense of recognition and dread as she surveys the familiar landscape.
As Edrion helps her step down, Lilith realizes with horror that she has failed to avoid the original plot.
Looking up at the canopy, the pink-haired girl reflects that she has ended up in the most dangerous location.
Narrative text identifies the location as the Sacred Forest, one of the Empire's 12 holy sites.
The party gathers in a clearing by the carriages as the mission in the forest begins.
A vision of the future depicts the dark-haired Edrion dying and offering a final, bloodied apology for a betrayal.
The scene returns to the present camp, emphasizing that this is the place where Edrion is destined to die.
Lilith watches the dark-haired Iron from a distance, her expression clouded with concern. She recalls that in the original story, Edrion is the central figure of the Sacred Forest narrative arc.
Lilith narrows her eyes in thought, realizing that despite her interventions, the preordained events are still unfolding.
The pink-haired girl clenches her fist, fueled by a sudden burst of determination to change fate.
Lilith vows to reach a different ending while her small leafy companion, Pee-Pee, chirps from her shoulder.
Lilith is surprised to find that Pee-Pee snuck along and wonders why the creature looks so fluffy.
Sensing someone approaching, Lilith frantically tells the little green spirit to be quiet and hide.
A stout man with brown hair accidentally bumps into Lilith and excitedly greets the arrival of the important guests.
The man offers a sycophantic smile, looking eager to please the noble visitors. Rinnock, the green-haired man with glasses, steps forward and asks if this man is the person in charge.
Rinnock attempts to discuss the forest's vegetation records, but the manager completely ignores him.
Bowing deeply to Edrion, the brown-haired man introduces himself as Clayton, the manager of the Sacred Forest.
Lilith observes with annoyance as Clayton continues to disregard Rinnock while fawning over Edrion and herself.
She reflects on how the man is blatantly disrespectful to those he deems beneath his social status.
Clayton ignores Rinnock's authority, prompting Edrion to turn and ask Lilith if she is feeling fatigued.
Lilith prepares to speak as she realizes she can use the manager's greedy nature to her advantage. Clayton enthusiastically recognizes her as Lady Noella, claiming he knew her identity at a single glance.
Lilith offers a polite thanks while privately doubting the manager's claim about her supposed reputation.
Clayton continues his overly helpful performance, promising to do whatever is necessary for her comfort.
A small, knowing smile plays on Lilith's lips as she prepares to set her plan in motion.
Lilith tells the manager that she has a specific favor to ask of him.
Lilith requests to stay in the government official quarters instead of camping, catching Clayton off guard.
Putting on a show of fragility, Lilith claims that someone of her delicate upbringing cannot sleep on the bare ground.
Renock is left speechless by Lilith's sudden and uncharacteristic display of high-maintenance behavior.
Renock recalls Lilith's past claims about being able to sleep anywhere as long as she had reports to keep her warm.
Renock watches in disbelief as Lilith continues her dramatic performance of a spoiled noblewoman.
Clayton looks nervous, sweating as he worries about the girl discovering something hidden within the quarters.
Lilith further insists that she will only accept service from her own maid while staying in the building.
The pink-haired girl pulls out a bag of coins, clarifying that she expects to pay for the accommodation.
Lilith hands over the heavy pouch, and the sight of the gold coins leaves Clayton visibly shaken. The manager's expression shifts to one of greed as he decides to use this opportunity to win favor with the Noella house.
Clayton quickly changes his mind and agrees to make an exception for the lady by providing her a room.
Lilith offers a gracious thank you while Edrion looks on with a quiet, observant expression. A character requests to send their maid ahead to prepare the room.
Amidst the trees, the dark-haired maid agrees to the request.
A person walks through the forest while acknowledging the instructions.
Lilith asks if the maid understands her role, and she confirms.
Workers transport supplies through the woods as a warning is given. The maid smiles, confident in her previous experience for this task.
Lilith walks away as the laborers continue their work.
The setting shifts to a large building at dusk.
Lilith enters a room and is startled by a noise.
Inside, the maid waits to greet her mistress back. Lilith inquires about the task, and the maid says it was simple.
The maid presents ledgers revealing that Clayton has been embezzling significant funds.
A silhouette reveals a man consumed by greed.
Lilith reviews the documents, noting Clayton's long history of taking bribes.
Hidden figures infiltrate the holy site while disguised as commoners.
These intruders are responsible for the corruption of the mana veins.
Lilith closes her eyes, reflecting on how Edrion discovered the truth.
Lilith questions why a lumberjack would pay such massive sums. She ponders the suspicious nature of large-scale lumberjack operations.
Lilith concludes that Clayton was bought off by the Shadows.
Lilith decides against sending the evidence to the capital.
The maid wonders where the ledger should go instead.
The scene shifts to a moonlight cap. A hooded figure approaches Edrion as he stands guard. Glowing flowers frame a moment of nighttime reflection.
Lilith removes her hood, glad to find the knight is awake.
Iron expresses surprise that she is staying in separate quarters. Iron looks extremely nervous as Lilith asks to enter his room. He questions the propriety of her visiting at such an hour.
Lilith explains that the matter they must discuss is highly sensitive.
Iron panics, imagining a terrifying confrontation with the silver-haired rival.
The knight reacts with shock to her presence.
A digital advertisement for translation and editing recruitment services.
Iron sweats profusely while Lilith repeats her request to enter. He remains flustered by the lady's late-night visit. Lilith maintains her serious expression regarding the sensitive topic.
Iron asks if she is referring to a private matter.
He overthinks the implications of a private meeting between them. Lilith looks up earnestly, preparing to reveal a truth. Iron is overcome with shame, thinking he must protect his otter.
He grips his sword, prepared to take extreme measures if insulted.
Lilith enters and clarifies that she needs his professional assistance. Iron trembles, still misinterpreting the situation in his state. He reaches for his weapon, wondering if he must die.
Lilith presents the records of Clayton's corruption and shadow involvement.
She shows the incriminating documents to the stunned knight. Iron grips the ledger, finally realizing the gravity of her discovery.
He scolds her for taking such a dangerous risk against Clayton.
Lilith smiles, explaining that she came to him for safety. She assures him the theft remains undiscovered for the time being.
Iron explains that as the one in charge of the World Tree, he cannot ignore Clayton's corruption.
Lilith emphasizes that her survival depends entirely on the health of the World Tree. Iron covers his face in frustration while cursing their difficult situation.
Iron questions what the local Knight Order has been doing to allow such corruption.
Iron notes that there seem to be very few knights present upon their arrival.
A flashback shows the corrupt official Clayton greeting the party at the forest.
Clayton is described as a man desperate to win over high-ranking nobles by hovering around them. Clayton laughs obliviously while a man in glasses watches from the background.
Lilith wonders if the total absence of knights could really be a mere coincidence.
Iron admits that the holy site has been essentially lawless for quite some time. A close-up captures Iron's focused and serious gaze. A close-up shows Lilith's determined blue eyes as she listens. Lilith requests that Iron keep the details of the corruption hidden from Edrion. Iron looks down with a somber and conflicted expression. Lilith worries that revealing this would create more enemies for Edrion among the already hostile nobility. Lilith reflects on how the outskirts remain rotten with influence from the former emperor's remnants.
Silver-haired Edrion stands alone in a dark, shimmering void.
Lilith contemplates the heavy official reasons behind her decision to stay silent.
The two stand together in the tent as Lilith finishes her explanation.
Narration explains that Iron and Edrion were once the closest of friends.
They were as close as biological brothers before they could even walk.
A childhood flashback shows the two boys playing together happily.
The memories of their shared childhood shatter like broken glass.
The former Emperor Laser's actions led to the ruin of House Arkshad.
Iron was forced to turn his back on Edrion to protect House Valenge. This betrayal left a deep and permanent stain of guilt in Iron's heart.
A dark textured transition marks the passage of painful years.
Edrion eventually returned to the capital as a celebrated war hero.
Despite their past, the two now only cross paths as cold colleagues. Iron began to treat his former friend strictly as a superior officer. Iron bows deeply, signaling the formal end of their once close friendship.
Iron stands tall as the narration reveals his fate was to die in the forest.
Lilith sighs, thinking that Iron didn't do anything wrong and suffered unnecessarily.
A tragic vision shows Edrion mourning over Iron's bloodied and lifeless body.
Lilith resolves to restore the mana vein so that Iron will not have to die.
Acheron stands bathed in a soft, ethereal light.
A close-up shows Iron offering a rare and gentle smile.
Iron tells Lilith that House Arkshad will be welcoming a fine lady.
Iron suggests Lilith stay in the tent tonight for safety, and she agrees.
Iron begins to show Lilith to her assigned quarters for the evening.
A sudden and violent explosion rocks the entire camp. Lilith clutches her head in shock as the ground trembles beneath her.
Smoke billows into the night sky, making Lilith fear a shadow attack. The shockwave from the massive blast ripples through the forest.
Lilith winces as debris falls around her during the chaos.
A pillar of fire and smoke erupts from the distant trees.
Lilith and Iron stare in horror at the sudden destruction.
Rapid footsteps approach the tent through the brass.
A figure emerges from the smoke and shadows of the night.
Edrion appears with an eerie smile and calls out to Lilith.
Lilith asks Edrion what is happening and mentions the loud explosion she heard.
Edrion explains that a magic tower experiment caused an accident but assures her that everyone is safe.
Lilith breathes a sigh of relief while admitting the noise terrified her.
Lilith is unsettled by the dark and unusual expression on Edrion's face. Realizing the awkwardness of the situation, Lilith freezes in momentary panic.
Lilith worries about being caught exiting Iron's tent so late at night.
She fears that Edrion will believe she has disgraced their family despite their shallow engagement.
Lilith is certain that Edrion is genuinely upset by the compromising sight.
Lilith frantically tries to explain her presence at the Mite's tent.
She claims she only asked Aaron for a separate tent because her quarters were uncomfortable.
Edrion questions the story, prompting Lilith to look to a nervous Iron for confirmation. Edrion accepts the explanation with a bright and deceptively calm smile.
Edrion reveals that the explosion destroyed their supplies, including all the spare tents.
Lilith panics, wondering if she must return to her uncomfortable quarters for the minute.
Edrion watches her closely with a calculating and intense gaze.
Edrion shocks Lilith by suggesting that they share his tent for the evening. He explains that his large tent includes a separate meeting area for her convenience.
Lilith tries to refuse the offer to avoid imposing, but Edrion insists it is no trouble.
Lilith remains hesitant about the propriety of the arrangement at such a late hour.
Edrion points out that visiting his adjutant alone at night is already quite scandalous.
Edrion maintains a cheerful demeanor while stating he cannot ignore the situation.
Lilith is left speechless by his logical yet trap-like reasoning.
Lilith realizes she has been completely cornered by his argument. Putting on a brave face, Lilith pretends to be thrilled about the tent sleeping adventure. Edrion welcomes her into the tent with a polite and inviting gesture. Lilith is amazed by the luxurious and spacious interior of the command tent.
She notes that the tent's remote location provides a high level of privacy.
Lilith reasons that the strict security will prevent any rumors about them sharing a tent.
Lilith takes a seat on the edge of the large bed. Edrion enters carrying a mountain of bedding and tells her there is no need to apologize.
He reminds her that their engagement makes such an arrangement perfectly acceptable.
Lilith thanks him quietly while the silver-haired man prepares the space.
Lilith looks up in confusion as Edrion suddenly approaches her.
Edrion asks for a moment as he reaches toward the startled pink-haired girl.
Edrion effortlessly sweeps Lilith up into his arms in a sudden movement.
Lilith blushes furiously as she is lifted without any warning.
Edrion gently places her on the bed and begins to tuck her in.
A close-up reveals Edrion looking down at her with a soft, affectionate expression.
Edrion kindly tells her to rest comfortably for the remainder of the night. Lilith offers a small, flustered thanks while staring up at him.
Lilith feels slightly guilty for taking his bed, but appreciates his extreme consideration.
Quiet settles over the camp as the moon hangs over the tent. Lilith tries to sleep, still feeling overwhelmed by the night's events.
She reflects on the warm feeling of being cherished so dearly by him.
Lilith concludes that it is a strange but not unwelcome sensation.
Outside the tent, Edrion releases his hidden rage through a series of violent sword strikes.
The silver-haired man vents his intense emotions by slashing through the night air.
Edrion drives his blade deep into the ground with a powerful and frustrated thrust.
He kneels in the dirt, breathing heavily as he tries to regain his composure.
Despite his outward exhaustion, a dark and ominous shadow lingers in Edrion's gaze.
Edrion's gold eyes narrow as he struggles with his mounting frustration.
The silver-haired man stands alone in the dark, looking deeply troubled.
Edrion spots a familiar cloaked figure near Iron's tent.
He remembers Lilith saying she would be in her quarters tonight.
He watches the pink-haired girl, wondering why she lied to him. He questions what secret business she could possibly have with Iron. Edrion tries to convince himself to respect her privacy and not eavesdrop.
Despite his resolve, suspicion and jealousy cloud his golden gaze.
An impressive darkness settles over the camp as he hesitates. Silhouettes on the tent wall confirm Lilith and Iron are together inside.
The shadows lean in close, making Edrion's heart sink with worry.
He curses under his breath, unable to handle the secrecy.
Edrion approaches the tent wall, compelled to hear the truth.
He hears Lilith pleading with Iron to keep their meeting a secret from him.
A recruitment notice for a scanlation group appears, seeking new members. Edrion remains frozen by the tent, listening to the muffled voices inside.
Lilith's request for secrecy echoes painfully in the silver-haired man's mind.
Edrion looks away, visibly wounded by her lack of trust.
Lilith explains that she wants to prevent Edrion from gaining even more enemies.
Edrion gasps as he realizes she is only trying to protect him.
He is struck by the realization that Lilith has been worrying about his burdens.
He understands now that she only turned to Iron to spare him more pain.
Edrion wonders if he should feel grateful, but he only feels miserable.
He laments that he has become a source of worry instead of a protector.
Standing in the clearing with his sword, Edrion feels like a failure.
He questions if his own weakness is why Lilith avoids marriage. Edrion's boots crunch on the grass as he walks back to his tent.
Lilith is fast asleep, looking peaceful despite the dangerous secrets she holds.
Edrion watches her sleep, his heart heavy with a mixture of love and guilt.
He decides that if his situation is holding her back, he will change it. He vows to become strong enough that no one can ever threaten her again.
A dark bird flies across the crescent moon in the night sky. On a city rooftop, a cloaked figure receives the avian messenger.
A subordinate kneels before a mysterious leader to deliver a report.
The messenger reveals that the Arkshot party has entered the sacred forest.
The red-eyed leader is intrigued to hear that Edrion brought his fiancée. The figures confirm that Lilith is the sole daughter of House Noella.
The red-eyed man reflects on the ongoing engagement between the two powerful houses.
They discuss how unusual it is for the cold Edrion to dote on a woman. A report arrives that one of their shadows was nearly killed at the estate.
A flashback shows the brutal efficiency with which Edrion dispatches intruders.
They reveal they discovered a woman stayed the night at Edrion's estate.
The leader watches his subordinate, waiting for more definitive proof.
A blood-stained handkerchief is presented as evidence of the encounter. The red-eyed man ponders the significance of the delicate, bloodied fabric.
He concludes that the woman at the estate must have been Lilith herself.
A sinister glow fills the man's red eyes as he forms a plan.
The subordinate asks if Edrion is truly serious about his feelings for Lilith. The leader dismisses the question, viewing Lilith only as a valuable tool.
He plots to kill Lilith to force House Noella into a war against Edrion.
The hooded conspirators hope to exploit Lilith as a weakness to incite internal conflict and destroy the alliance between the two houses.
Changing their strategy, the group decides to head into the forest to assassinate the Noella woman. The red-eyed leader vows to unleash the long-held resentment of his ancestors against his enemies.
A dark messenger bird glides over the city as the leader laments those who died in misery.
Morning breaks over the forest camp as the first day of the investigation mission officially begins.
A cheerful brown-haired man offers enthusiastic and loud encouragement to the hardworking crew.
Sir Clayton eagerly offers his assistance to Lilith and her companions, asking if they need anything done. Lilith notes that the man is being particularly sycophantic today while trying to curry favor.
While Lilith reflects on his ignorance regarding the tampered ledgers, Clayton asks if she had a pleasant night.
Clayton points out that Lilith was notably absent from the quarters they had specifically prepared for her.
Lilith frantically searches for a natural-sounding excuse that will not raise any red flags or suspicion. She decides to lean further into her established persona as a naive and clueless noble lady. Lilith feigns a romantic motive, claiming she wanted to use the camp outing to grow closer to Edrion.
She continues her performance, laughing about how few outings they will have once she becomes a duchess. Lilith offers Sir Clayton a sweet apology for making him go out of his way to help her.
Clayton dismisses her apology with a laugh, stating that an exalted lady has no reason to be sorry.
Clayton observes that the couple seems to be getting along much better than rumors originally suggested.
He realizes there is significant profit to be gained from their surprisingly affectionate and close relationship. Lilith continues her loud performance by praising Edrion's height and his exceptionally handsome appearance.
Edrion freezes in shock as he overhears Lilith making bold compliments about his amazing physique.
Lilith remains oblivious to her fiancé's presence as he stands nearby in the brush holding a scroll.
The silver-haired man blushes intensely after hearing Lilith's unexpected and highly flattering remarks. Edrion stands stunned and blushing in the clearing as Lilith and Clayton continue their conversation nearby.
Lilith is overcome with embarrassment after realizing that her fiancé heard every word of her praise.
A small leafy creature suddenly prepares to spring toward the startled and blushing pink-haired girl.
The tiny green creature pounces and lands squarely on Lilith's face, surprising the entire group.